Friday, September the 17th. Good morning. I'm Chris Curries. Right now in Ottawa, we've got a mix of sun and clouds. It's 11 degrees in Smiths Falls, 13. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The chair of the Transit Commission has written a letter to the Ottawa Student Transportation Authority, wondering why so many West End bus routes have been cancelled for students. The city councillor for Canada North, Alan Hubley, says 55% of all cancelled routes are in 3 wards, including his own. He says he's hearing from parents that a commute to a specialized school from the West End to Canterbury now takes 3 hours on OC Transpo, and they have to make a number of transfers.
I've heard from some parents that are saying, they're going to have to take their kids out of these specialized programs, that those kids worked really, really hard to get into them.
His big gripe is why weren't the cuts made more evenly throughout the city, and what was the criteria that led to that decision? We'll have Alan Hubley coming up on the talk show with Derek Phage in about 15 minutes' time. Now, Alberta now hoping its provincial counterparts can help bolster its healthcare system, which is days away from complete collapse amid surging COVID-19 cases. And Ontario among the provinces offering help. Our Jamie Pulfer joins us with the desperate situation unfolding in the prairies and what's being done to avoid disaster.
As the 4th wave threatens to overwhelm hospitals within days in Alberta, ICU patients may be flown to Ontario. This province, in a similar out-of-control situation not long ago, is now offering help. There's a similar offer from Newfoundland. Alberta's ICUs are operating at 155% over normal capacity. This as officials push people to get vaccinated, a polarizing issue, according to the head of that province's health services.
I think we can't always make the assumption that it's because of, the diehard anti-vaxxer beliefs. And we need to make sure that people are educated, that they're informed.
In nearby Saskatchewan, its healthcare system is also under pressure. Its vaccination rate is one of the lowest in the country. So mandatory mask rules are back starting today. A proof of vaccination system goes into effect October 1st. A similar system begins in Ontario on Wednesday. I'm Jamie Pulfer.
CHEO says they're currently seeing heavier than normal volumes in their emergency department, and they're urging parents to plan to wait longer for their children to be seen, but also to come only if the child needs urgent medical care. Now, Ottawa Public Health expanding its immunization services at its 4 community vaccination clinics that it will include routine and catch-up immunizations for eligible children and youth. In addition to providing COVID-19 vaccines for people born in 2009 or earlier, starting today, they'll be offering by appointment only publicly funded immunizations for eligible children and youth aged 0 to 17, like chickenpox, for measles, and tetanus. These clinics are at the University of Ottawa Minto Sports Complex, J.H. Putnam School, Eva James Memorial Center, and the Orleans Family Runny YMCA. Full details are up on our website at ottawa.citynews.ca. City News time is 9:03. Let's check your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
For Ottawa, the Valley, and Smiths Falls today, we'll have sun and cloud for the most part, but there is a chance of showers, an isolated storm. The high 27 will feel like 34. Tonight, rain overnight, 17 for the low, and for the weekend, less humid. Should have plenty of sunshine, highs near 24. For today, the high 27.
And I'm Chris Curries. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
When the headlines say X,
he's got the Y.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Good morning, Ottawa. It is Friday. That's right, we made it. Derek Phage here, filling in for Rob Snow. I have some breaking news update, an exciting update for you. Rob is back on Monday, Election Day. I know, you're all like, oh my God, when's Rob coming back? Not to worry. Oh my God, is that going to be a good show? Hey? I cannot wait to tune in on Monday. Rob is going to be fired up. It's Election Day on Monday. We've made it this far. Oh my goodness. Congratulate yourselves for making it this far. An election that, as far as polls are concerned, most of us didn't even want. It is the last weekday of this federal election campaign. I think I speak for everyone when I say, thank goodness, this is almost over. It's almost over. We're going to do our best to review some of the big stuff you should know before the weekend. we probably should ask ourselves to start things off, where are the federal leaders today? Where are they, right? Three main parties, of course, zeroing in on key battlegrounds in both Quebec and Ontario. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau is in Windsor making an announcement, which should be starting any minute now. When we get that announcement, we'll try to share some of those details with you at some point during the show. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is on the grounds of Sherbrooke University in Quebec. His itinerary says he is talking about Trudeau's failing climate record and his plan to protect big polluters. Jagmeet looking to make some body blows versus Justin today. That's slated to start at 9:45. Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole will be in London and St. Catharines today. He's making an announcement at 12:30 this afternoon in London and then holding a rally with supporters in St. Catharines later this evening. By the way, new this morning from the Toronto Star. Oh, one of our favorite publication pieces here on the Rob Snow Show. By the way, that was dripping with sarcasm. Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party appear to be losing another candidate to sexual allegations. This time it's relating to a dropped sexual assault charge from 2019 against Spadina Fort York candidate Kevin Vaughn. Here's a statement. The federal Liberals have asked one of their election candidates in downtown Toronto to pause, not cancel. We're just hitting the pause button. A little late for a pause. I think a cancellation is probably the best situation here. As Monday we go to the polls. To pause his campaign after the Star revealed he was charged with sexual assault in 2019 and that the charge was dropped later that year. In a statement to the Star on Thursday night, Spadina Fort York Liberal candidate Kevin Vaughn said he wanted to unequivocally state that these allegations are false and that he vigorously fought them until the sexual assault charge was dropped in 2019. We'll see what comes of this. He also said he would have continued that fight if the charge had not been withdrawn and stated it is deeply troubling that the allegations resurfaced just days before the election. Deeply troubling, but certainly not surprising. This is the way politics works these days, right? Oh, let's try to find something absolutely, some skeletons in the closet as we close in on Election Day. By the way, Spadina Fort York is a riding without a Liberal incumbent after MP Adam Vaughan announced he would not be seeking election. All right, let's talk about the issues. All right? By the way, it's the Friday free-for-all today for the 10 o'clock hour, so you can talk about anything. And maybe these are some of the things you want to talk about. 750-1310 after 10 o'clock news. In the dying days of the campaign, the leaders are making their final pitches to voters. Right? This week has been all about Trudeau versus O'Toole. The two have been going back and forth, attacking each other's character and leadership. O'Toole has spent a lot of the week pushing his message that he's the new conservative, that his party is ethical, forward-looking, and progressive. But one thing, and one thing only, has dominated the news coverage both yesterday afternoon and into this morning. It was all about Jason Kenney and Alberta's COVID crisis. I mean, it is a crisis. Jason Kenney announcing that they were 10 days away of running out of beds in the ICU. All right? That's a crisis. O'Toole was grilled by reporters at his campaign events on the East Coast Thursday on Jason Kenney's handling of the pandemic. Liberals wasted no time in digging up old videos. Yes, this is something else we love to do in an election. I mean, they're not the only ones, right? We've seen both. You've seen the ads, right? You've seen the ads on TV. You've heard the ads on radio. Liberals wasted no time in digging up old videos of O'Toole praising Kenney's pandemic strategy earlier in the year and attacked him online with vigor. O'Toole didn't condemn or praise Kenney, which, I'm not sure was a great idea, to be honest with you. He gave mostly pre-prepared answers that skirted the issue. Here's a bit of what he had to say on Thursday.
I've consistently said that we will work with the provinces and respect the decisions they make with respect to fighting the Delta variant wave of COVID-19. Each province are putting the best decisions forward for the health and economic stability of their provinces. From one coast to another, they need a federal partner that will help think about it. Rather than double up our resources to fight this Delta spread, he called an election. The $600 million this election costs could be helping all provinces in their fight. So as Prime Minister, I will be there as the wingman to the provinces to fight COVID-19 and to secure our future.
Well, that's what you call a pivot during an answer, right? Leave it up to the provinces. They're going to do the best job. Aaron, note to self. Not doing the best job out there in Alberta. Okay, could have used some help. All right. Justin Trudeau said a new Liberal government will support Alberta's fight against their fourth wave, and again attacked O'Toole on the issue of vaccines.
What we'll do more of is being there to offer any support we can to Alberta in this difficult time. Ventilators are on the way. Anything more we can do, whether it's sending more medical professionals, as we did to Ontario a few months ago when they were overwhelmed. We're going to make sure that Albertans get the support from everyone in this country the way they need. The way to get through this pandemic is through vaccinations. But Mr. O'Toole is still letting the anti-vaxxers within his own party run the show.
He's letting the anti-vaxxers in his own party run the show. I mean, no facts are necessary during an election campaign, but he said it so, with that breathiness. So it must be. And the deep inhale, my goodness. NDP leader, not to be, we don't want to leave out Jagmeet Singh. He was also asked about the situation in Alberta. He criticized Kenny's leadership in the province, but guess what? Shocking news. He quickly pivoted to attacking Justin Trudeau for calling the election.
Well, there's no question that Mr. Kenny is to blame here and that his leadership has been horrible. But it doesn't also dismiss the fact that Mr. Trudeau called an election while the fourth wave was hitting hard, while everyone knew that it was going to hit, and while he said no 22 times to bringing in an expansion of paid sick leave. He said no to workers. People lost their life because of that. People could have benefited from that paid sick leave right now. And now he announces it in a cynical way, the height of cynicism in the middle of an election. That's a failure of leadership.
Now, unlike Aaron O'Toole, and I said yesterday, listen, I think Aaron O'Toole has had a calm demeanor. He sort of flipped the switch. He went away from the attacking yesterday. He was back to the calm, showing leadership. But there you had Jagmeet Singh saying, listen, Jason Kenney has done a horrible job, which he has. Don't be afraid, Aaron O'Toole, to point out the reality of a situation. He's done a horrible job. It's okay. You could have said he's done a horrible job. However, if I was prime minister, I would have worked more closely with Jason Kenney to find better solutions, blah, blah, blah. But no, you decided not to say anything. Just my advice. I know, Aaron, you're probably listening. It's advice from Derek. It's free. Congratulations. We should take a minute to talk about what's going to happen on Monday and how votes will be counted this year. This won't be a regular election, right? Elections Canada has distributed 1.2 million mail-in voting kits. 58% of domestic ballots have been completed and returned to the agency. That's higher than 2019, when that final number was 55%. So that's certainly expected to increase. Close races could be decided by final batches of mail-in ballots counted Tuesday morning. No controversy is going to happen there. Wow, we didn't see that anywhere in North America. There could be some drama if there is no clear winner September 20th, right? There are several ridings across the country where the number of mail-in ballots that will be counted after Election Day actually exceed the margin of victory in the 2019 election, meaning it's possible and even likely that these races won't be called until a few days after the election. According to Politico, one of these ridings is in the key 905 battleground of Richmond Hill, where the Liberal incumbent won by 212 votes in 2019. That, by the way, one of the closest races in Canada. The number of mail-in ballots in that riding this year is 3,771. So this is going to be a fun one to watch. Okay. little back to reality here. Let's come back. It's Friday. It's the Rob Snow Show, so that means it's the Friday free-for-all on the Talk Back Hour. We don't pick the topics. You pick the topics. We like to stick to things that are in the news, but maybe there's something not in the news that you should think, should be. Give us a call after the 10 o'clock news, 613-750-1310. We'll also take some more time during that hour to bring in the latest polling data. I've got some of the latest polling data to share with you and recap the big campaign promises of the election. If you're still deciding who to vote for, make sure to listen, because we're going to help you try to figure it out. That's what we're here for. All right, switching gears. Something closer to home. Let's talk about something closer to home here in Ottawa. We're going to be turning our attention to a local issue. Councillor Alan Hubley says the school bus cancellations you've been hearing about are disproportionately affecting his ward of Canada South, which encompasses the neighborhoods of Bridlewood and Glencairn, several elementary schools, and A.Y. Jackson High School. He's going to join us next to explain what's going on and why he's written to the agency in charge of school buses to complain. I have the letter right in front of me here. So we're going to be talking to Alan Hubley, City Councillor for Canada South and Chair of the Transit Commission, coming up after this. This is Derek Phage filling in for Rob Snow right here on Rogers TV and City News.
Ottawa Markets was created by the City of Ottawa to help rejuvenate the outdoor markets program in Byward and Wellington West, where we have the Parkdale Market. And so we set to work on bringing in the right team with the right experience and reaching out to local vendors and local farmers, because we knew when we did a survey of our customers that was the one thing that was really important to them, both at Byward and in Parkdale, is to start bringing back that local product. And that's what you can see behind us here at the York Street Farmers Market. We put in place a Farmers First policy, which means that we will deal with farmers from the region first. And we're going to give them priority in terms of placement. They're going to have reduced fees in coming to the market. We've also made it free for any farm that's been in operation for under 2 years. The market also put in place a BIPOC initiative, which is a Black, Indigenous, and Peoples of Color initiative, which provides grants and support opportunities for folks from those communities to come on out to the market to reduce systemic barriers that have existed. As a farmer's market, we can have a variety of vendors here, from an artisan to a microprocessor who's taking local ingredients and putting them into a product in a kitchen and selling that, to breweries and distilleries this year, which were changes that the province put in place, which allowed us to bring in a few of those vendors as well, which I think is a nice surprise for people sometimes at 9 in the morning after a pandemic. But it's been going really well, and some of the breweries have been pretty appreciative, because for them, whether it just be doing delivery or curbside pickup, it gives them an opportunity to come back out and talk with their customer and talk about what makes their product so special. Throughout the market, the health and safety protocols that you're going to see, masks are still required. That is obviously the case, and you'll see a number of signs noting that around the area. We've got a number of hand sanitizer units, I call them droids, throughout the area that you can sort of just grab a pump or a squeeze wherever you go. But what we've also had to do is reduce the number of vendor spaces we have in the market by 50%. This ensures that we can guarantee that our vendors are going to have that distance, that we can, have a little bit better flow around the market. But what we also did was, as I said, we created the York Street Farmers Market, which is just microprocessors and local producers only, and that's on Saturdays. In Parkdale, we launched the night market, which is bringing a lot of the same content, but in the evening, and residents are sort of spilling out into the park. So we're looking at what we're doing as trying to support, create, and enhance public space for the residents of the city. It's been great. The community, which is what this market is here for, and then as tourism comes back, obviously we'll welcome all visitors. But the response has been really great. The community's come on out, they're speaking with their wallets and their dollars, which obviously at the end of the day, we want a great experience, but it needs to be a valuable economic opportunity for the vendors who are coming out.
Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derek Phage here from Rogers TV, filling in for Rob Snow. My final day. Don't be sad, friends, because you know what? As I mentioned off the top, it's going to be an exciting day on Monday. Because you just imagine Rob has built up, sitting at home. He's just built up all of this energy, listening to what's happening in the news and what all the parties are saying. He'll be back Monday morning, and I guarantee he's going to be on fire. However, for right now, we turn our attention closer to home to a local issue than we're turning our attention away from the election. Because, as I mentioned right before the break, Councillor Alan Hubley says that school bus cancellations you've been hearing about are disproportionately affecting his ward of Canada South. That encompasses the neighborhoods of Bridlewood and Glencairn, several elementary schools, and AY Jackson. And he joins us now to explain what's going on and why he's written to the agency in charge of school buses to complain. Alan, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Derek, for inviting me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So you did write to the agency, and one of the first questions I've got the letter in front of me here. You ask is, how do you determine which routes to cut? Before we get to that answer, just tell us a little bit about the situation there in Canada South.
Well, it's actually a situation in both Canada North, South, and Stittsville, and a few other West End wards on top of that. But for our area, 31 of the 55 routes were cut for the public school board. Okay. And on the Catholic board, 15 out of 28 were cut. So that means 55% of the routes. Those 3 wards alone.
That's cut. A significant number, for sure.
And if you factor in the nearby wards, like Bay Ward and that, the number goes up to 82% of the routes were cut in the West End.
So what are you hearing then from your constituents? I mean, I imagine, first of all, long rides on OC Transpo, but I'm sure some parents are even having to reschedule their own work lives to try to get some of their kids to school. To and from.
And if you're a parent of multiple children at multiple schools, this just is not something that you're going to be able to manage well. The challenge that comes out of this is Maryville High School and Canterbury High School have specialized programs in there that the kids from Canada and surrounding areas attend those schools. Canterbury has a stellar reputation for their arts program.
Oh, absolutely.
My own wife's a graduate from that school. And Maryville has the gifted program. Well, we're hearing from parents that it's taking, an hour and a half to 2 hours one way on the OC Transpo buses because we don't have a direct bus that's going to those schools. So they've got to take the one that stops at various places along the way.
Let's go back to that question I mentioned off the top. You asked the agency, how do you determine which routes to cut? What was their answer?
Oh, they have an answer. We've just sent that letter out.
Okay.
We've been, through OC Transpo and also through, great cooperation with the school trustee, Christine Boothby. She's been, we've been talking every day about this, and she's been helping to put the pieces together for us. So kudos to her. And also our MPP, Marilee Fullerton's looking into it from a provincial viewpoint because, the province is paying this organization the money to get these kids to school.
Do you have any idea when you're going to hear back? Have they reached out to you to say, listen, we've received your letter and we'll get back to you by this time?
No.
Nothing.
No, not yet. I'm hoping. The other thing I'm hoping for here, Derek, is by talking to you and making the letter public. We've got hundreds of emails from parents desperate for help with this situation. So I want them to know that we're doing everything we can here to help them. And, this letter is just part of that effort. There's also efforts going on behind the scenes to try and make it work that we can have a dedicated bus that will get them there. We've got some work going on with that. I can't announce it yet, but I'm hopeful.
Yeah, and I would say the other issue as far as raising awareness goes is the fact that there's no bus drivers, right? And so there's a lack of drivers for those people that are perhaps, retired and looking for something on the side and so forth. And, I think it's a great experience. I understand we're in a pandemic, and that's why we probably have a lack of drivers, because there's some reluctance of people, getting on a bus with packed with students and so forth. But this is another way to raise awareness and say, hey, you know what? There are some jobs out there available if you're looking for some part-time work.
Well, I think we're hearing this, Derek, not just in school bus profession, but also in the service industry.
Oh, absolutely.
That, it's whether it's a matter of not having a comfort level with the preventive measures that are being taken to protect you from COVID, or there's also, we're hearing lots of stories about people just want to stay home because that CERB payment will put more money in their pockets than if they go to work.
Yeah.
So it's a scary situation for our economy, and now it affects our kids, which is even worse when we're starting to impact our children.
September 14th marked 2 years since, we're just going to switch gears here, marked 2 years since Ottawa's LRT system started carrying passengers. Obviously, ridership, talking about the pandemic, ridership plunged in 2021 and early 2021. With COVID lockdowns, shift to remote work, and that sort of thing. So I don't think there's a huge surprise why ridership is gone down, and the loss of revenue and so forth. But reliability has still been an issue that everybody continues to talk about. Al, I understand you're meeting on Monday. What might you be talking about during that meeting?
Well, Monday we're going to get a full update on, what the issues are, what's being done to correct them, what's being done to prevent future issues, the full gambit. Staff will be in there to answer all the questions. It's, spoiler alert, a lot of that information has already been put out in updates, because what we did when we started having some trouble in August was right away go to issuing memos with all the details about, what's the latest news, what's happened, what are we doing with it. So a lot of that info is out there, but Monday we'll roll it all together into one presentation and, answer any questions that may still be outstanding on this. So that's what you can expect on Monday.
How confident are you on the issue of reliability and, the issues with axle bearings that were discovered, shut down the line for quite some time? How confident are you that, our partner that we're working with, that can resolve these for good?
Well, let's look back over the last year, for example. Most of the time, the service was running at 97 to 98% efficiency, which is, a great high number, means everything was going well. We have to realize, like any other LRT system anywhere else in North America or elsewhere, they always have issues. I remember finding out that the Toronto transit system, for example, 54% of their shutdowns were related to door issues, shutdowns of 5 minutes or more.
Yeah, and Montreal has had their own issues as well.
We all do. All the systems do, and that's why they talk to each other and they learn from each other and find ways to do it. But the reality being, it's a system with a lot of moving parts, and nowadays it's got a lot of computerized systems involved and everything too. There's always going to be something that got to tweak. So, for example, with the wheel bearing that you mentioned, we shut the system down as a proactive measure because we can automatically put the buses in place to get people to where they need to go. So your ridership hopefully isn't inconvenienced too much. And the reason we shut it down is because we want to take every single train and inspect every single axle bearing to see, is this, like your own cars? Is it a manufacturer's defect? Is it something that got missed? What's happening here? And we were able to find out that there was that little nut that, we put that picture out there of what it looks like. It had a little too much play in it. So now they've gone in, they've opened up all the axle bearings and tightened up that nut in every one that it needed to be. But now they know going forward to check that as part of their regular maintenance.
Right.
So that means that should not happen again.
Well, fingers crossed on that, Alan. Certainly, Alan.
The first time something happens, Derek, is where we get hit with the big shutdown. So with the new system, I hope people understand we're doing that for their own safety. That we're stopping the system, we're going through it to do that, and we're doing it because we have the ability to put buses on to make sure that they still get to wherever they want to go.
Yeah, agreed. No, I mean safety. I think everybody understands it's done for safety reasons. It's just the frustration with the delays and so forth. Alan, really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you, Derek.
You're very welcome. That's Alan Hubley, City Councillor for Canada South and Chair of the Transit Commission. We spoke about AUKUS yesterday. AUKUS, if you're wondering what the heck that is, well, we'll break it down for you after the break. The United States, Britain, and Australia are creating a new defense pact. And what does that mean for Canada? This is Derek Phage filling in for Rob Snow on Rogers TV and City News.
This hour of the Rob Snow Show is brought to you by Cardinal Planning. Protect your wealth. Visit cardinalplanning.ca. In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, September the 17th. Good morning. I'm Chris Curries. Right now in Ottawa, some partly cloudy skies, 15 degrees, mainly sunny in Smiths Falls. It's 18. Here's what's making news this hour. A West End city councillor has written a letter to the Ottawa Student Transportation Authority, wondering why 55% of West End bus routes have been cancelled. Alan Hubley says he's hearing from parents that a commute to a specialised school like Canterbury now takes 3 hours on OC Transpo, and they have to make a number of transfers. His big gripe, why weren't the cuts made more evenly throughout the city, and what was the criteria that led to those decisions? Key battleground ridings are emerging with just 3 days until Election Day. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau is in Windsor, about to speak shortly. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh will focus his efforts in Quebec and then Nova Scotia, while Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole is campaigning in London and St. Catharines. The latest opinion polls suggest the race between the Liberals and Conservatives is still too close to call. And the number of complaints coming into Ottawa's bylaw department rising, and its director says officers are struggling to meet the expected response times. In many municipalities, an individual bylaw officer deals with between 400 and 600 calls per year. In Ottawa, officers currently facing about 900 calls each year. The bylaw director says that's simply too many, and the increase is tied to the fact both human and pet populations are growing, while council is passing new bylaws that need to be enforced. City News time is 9:34. I'm Chris Curries. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derek Phage here filling in for Rob. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, but we wanted to dive in and go a bit deeper on this today. And we're talking about AUKUS. What is that? Well, a brief summary for you. The United States, Britain, and Australia are creating a new defense pact meant to contain the military might of China. AUKUS, which is named after the three countries' initials, by the way, does not include Canada. So there is no caucus, no Kanaukus. All right, friends? And here to break it all down for us, you should follow her, by the way, on social media, because she's been talking about this on social media and giving her perspective and what this means for Canada. Stephanie Carvin, Associate Professor of International Relations at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs, Carleton University, and a former security analyst. Stephanie, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure. So what's your initial reaction to this news, Stephanie?
So I think the big takeaway, the big bottom line up front is that this is actually the continuation of a trend. It's not a new thing. And the reason I say that is, I've been fortunate to do research in Washington, D.C. With my colleague, Tamaj, at the University of Ottawa. And we interviewed 16 Canadian and American officials in Washington, D.C. And we've also actually interviewed some more individuals here in Canada, both Canadian and foreign. And what we found is that the Three Eyes is real. It's a real thing. It was a real thing in 2019, and it's a real thing now because Australia does a lot better at strategically engaging its allies. It's much more present. It's much more there. And they tend to contribute a lot more in terms of time, many resources, and discussions when it comes to the intelligence relationship. So basically, when I heard the news, I wasn't shocked that this is something that happened. It was more that I was like, yeah, actually, this is entirely consistent with what we were hearing 2 years ago.
Yeah, I just wonder why they didn't just bring Australia into the Five Eyes project instead of just, starting a brand new project and leaving Canada and I believe, New Zealand out. So what are the implications, if any, for Canada's security establishment here?
Well, I don't actually. I think there's good news and bad news. Okay, let's start with the good news. The good news is,
all right.
So let's start with the good news. I think the good news is that, honestly, I don't think it changes that much. I mean, we like to think of ourselves as a global actor in Canada and that we're all over the place. We're not. Like, we basically, we don't care about the Pacific.
Yeah.
We hardly have any resources there. And the way we tend to engage in the Pacific is far more diplomatic than military, right? We've always kind of treated Asia as an area of diplomacy. So it's like from a defense, like we haven't actually been a part of any kind of defense alliance or agreement since the ceasefire in the Korean War.
Right.
So it's like, it really doesn't change that much on the ground. But there are bad news. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and that's what you've explained in the Globe News, Globe Mail, I should say, and explaining, why it's pretty. I mean, this is pretty consistent with Canada's low engagement in the Indo-Pacific, as you just said. So yeah, move on to the bad news portion of this.
The bad news is, like I said, it is a continuation of a trend, right? Canada, we're just not very present in important discussions, and that's not because we're not invited. It's a choice. I actually think our allies, and having spoken to our allies, they want more Canada. They want us to engage. They want us to contribute, but we don't. Right. When we spoke to Canadians in Washington, they said it was really hard to even just get Canadian officials to go to Washington. You can do it as a day trip. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What
at 9.
What is going on?
I know. Well, my gut feeling is travel budgets, that, if there's big travel budgets, it gets a news story and then everyone loses their mind. But I mean, this is the problem, right? Like, so we don't, people don't make the trip to Washington. But also we don't have a lot of representatives. Like, Australia has more representatives in the U.S. Department of Defense than Canada does.
Which makes your head shake, right?
Well,
I mean,
exactly.
so that leads to the question, what does this say about Canada-U.S. relations?
It says that we take it for granted.
Okay.
Right? We think because that, we think that the Americans are always going to have to listen to us or take us seriously because we're America's hat. Like, we're sitting on top of them.
Right.
And so, like, we're always going to be there. And to a certain extent, that's true. But that means, though, when, the nature of threats are changing, right? I mean, it's not like, one time we worried about like Soviet invasion and I don't know, things like this, but we've never had to worry about those kinds of things, right?
Right.
Because we're protected by 3 oceans. We don't, we're not a landmass in Asia where like a big war is going to be fought. But I think the difference is that we are, like the cyber threats, foreign influence. We have a fairly aggressive China right now, who is kind of trying to upset certain norms and understanding in the South China Seas and elsewhere. And as those threats change and they become, say, less geographically determined, we're not going to be a part of the conversations that are kind of trying to come up with solutions. And the Canadian voice, the Canadian perspective is not going to be heard because we just aren't participating in ways that I think we could be more effective. And I think, so that to me is the bad news. So it's like,
right.
I'm not, this is a sub-agreement, like it's a nuclear sub-agreement. And I mean, I know in the same article,
But Stephanie, don't we need our own nuclear subs?
That's a whole other conversation.
Okay,
right?
we won't go into that today.
We will. Good. I mean, I'm not a sub expert. Like, I love Hunt for Red October. Totally my favorite movie of all time. But
that makes you a sub expert right there.
No, right? Obviously, Jackson Ramis and me we're tight. But the fact is with subs, you want to, like we have an Arctic. We may want to have nuclear subs, but. And then there's also, proliferation concerns, things. We may have sat out on this regardless, right? Even if we were invited. Like, this may have just been like, it's not really what we do. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be stepping up our engagement game with the United States, with our allies. We do actually need a foreign policy. And I know that wasn't the sexiest issue during debate because it's never a sexy issue in elections. But, this is kind of the consequences. We become left out. And to me, that's not a great thing because I actually think we have our own unique interests and we have our own unique perspectives. We don't have to just do what America says. We can actually come up with our own ideas, but we have to bring those ideas to the table.
Right.
And we're not doing that.
Yeah, we don't have a voice, unfortunately. Since we've got you on the line, this is something you mentioned. That you don't hear much about foreign investment. You don't hear much about foreign policy. You don't hear much about, working with our allies when it comes to a campaign. Something else I haven't heard much about is cyber and foreign interference in the federal election. No one's talking about it. The parties aren't talking about it. The media's not talking about it. Is Canada a target whatsoever?
Oh, we are absolutely a target.
Okay.
And I mean, we have been in recent years making our, we've been doing cyber attributions. We've made attributes. So an attribution is when you say, hey, country X, we know that you did this cyber attack and we're holding you responsible for it.
Okay.
And we've made those against, recently against China. It was a big one. Canada participated in the largest ever cyber attribution, which was all NATO countries and all EU countries, plus Australia and a couple other Asian countries coming out and basically saying, China, we know that you did this large attack.
Yeah.
And that's not nothing. And so, I mean, the good news is I actually think when it comes to cyber, Canada's in a relatively good position because we're pretty nimble. We have allocated our resources in more efficient ways than some of our allies have, right? Like they're kind of centralized with the communication security establishment, and that's a good thing. But at the end of the day, we need more than just like how are we encouraging our companies to adopt good cyber practices? At the start of the pandemic, for example, it became clear that, foreign countries were targeting our research into vaccines or, how we manufacture healthcare related things. And, basically the CSE had to come out and say that. And all of a sudden their phone starts ringing off the hook with all these labs saying, what do you mean I'm a target? Or am I being targeted? And why? It would have been nice if this work had been done in advance. Mm-hmm. So how are we engaging with not just large companies, but also small, medium enterprises who are engaging in this kind of research and doing these kinds of things? Foreign influence. We keep hearing time and time again, really hellacious stories about people being targeted and harassed by governments, that are foreign governments, and we don't really seem to be taking any of that seriously or having a place for them to go. There's no centralized coordination strategy.
Yeah.
CSIS collects information. The RCMP says, well, that's nice, but there's not much we can do about it. The local police, they're technically responsible for threats and threat uttering, but they're not seeing the national picture. So these are serious issues that are impacting Canadian security right now that, you're right, we're just not hearing about.
Yeah, I apologize for laughing. It's so typically Canadian. It's frustrating that, and as you just described, we have some information. RCMP goes, oh, great, excellent work coming up with all that information. I mean, we're not going to do anything, but at least we know what's going on. Stephanie, a real pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you for letting me get my rant out before the weekend.
Our pleasure. That's Cheers. Stephanie Carvin, cheers, Associate Professor of International Relations at the Norman Patterson School of International Affairs, Carleton University, and former security analyst. Coming up after the break, Randall Denley, author and Ottawa Citizen columnist. He has a great column in the Ottawa Citizen in Ottawa about Ottawa ridings. In Ottawa, a little strategic voting could go a long way. As we know, Ottawa's voting pattern is heavily liberal. So we're going to talk to him about that and some specific ridings. We'll be back with Randall Denley right after this on the Rob Snow Show. Derek Phage filling in for Rob on Rogers TV and City News.
It was devastating, and it's devastating to all small business, but not knowing where it was going to go. But then the renovation market, as people stayed home, took off like wildfire. And for us, yes, we're very lucky, very fortunate that we were able to turn things around. I think a lot of it had to do with our internet presence as well, that I was, kept working on over years, and then it kind of took off. So that was very positive. But now, no, people are staying at home. We're renovating different markets, whether it's a kitchen or a backyard or, your fireplace. They want to cozy things up. So yes, things are extremely busy right now. Right now it's fireplaces, and I think with the snowbirds, a lot of those clients have existing wood fireplaces, so they're looking at inserts. So they want to convert the wood to gas. They don't want to deal with the wood part of it, but they want it clean and easy and efficient, and that's been a major increase in our business. The cottage and chalet market has really increased, absolutely. We see that people, that's their staycation now, is either the backyard or their cottage with their close bubble of family. So there's no question that we've seen a big increase in that area as well. I've seen a change in the backyard because now the staycation, from my past being in the pool business, one of our great clients was in the other day, and he's in the pool business. He's booking for 2022. For in-ground pools, okay? So I think what's happened now is that's brought everybody back home, and I think maybe down the road, maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're still gonna see people spending time in their backyards and staying home more. The barbecue area, really, we call it the backyard. So you walk out of your house into a backyard, and it kind of looks like that with the fencing and the sky and things like that. So that is just our fun room. It's just, there's a lot of cool gadgets there that has to do with dealing with charcoal and wood pellet barbecues. To go online, you're going to find, you just Google, romantic fireplaces will come up. The one nice thing about our work is that when the Google reviews and the Google pictures are phenomenal. We're uploading stuff every day. I have at least 1,000 jobs, real jobs that you can take a look at, either on the Google pictures on the drive, or if you go to our website at romanticfireplaces.com and click on Our Work. It's where we used to load lots of them up, but there's lots of pictures there too. But the great thing about that is they're real. There's testimonials there about people talking about our team. And our team here is unique to everybody else. It's two small teams, but these fellas work for me. They're our guys. So when they go into your home, they care as much about your house as you do.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derek Phage here, filling in for Rob for the week. We are joined by Randall Denley, author and Ottawa Citizen columnist. Randall, how are you this morning?
I'm good, Derek.
Excellent. Well, we're going to jump into these local ridings, but before we get to that, we want to talk about probably the most important issue that everyone has been talking about for probably the last 24 hours, Randall. And we follow you on social media, and we know this is something you're passionate about, and that's the vaccine name change, Randall. What do you think about the vaccine name change? What team are you on? What vaccines have you received?
I don't know if I could even remember the name now. I have to say, Derek, I was one of the people having a good laugh about this yesterday. It is funny because the names are
ridiculous.
Spikevax
is probably the best one, I'd say. Spikevax.
I did hang that on Health Canada in a tweet yesterday, though, and just to be accurate, is the manufacturers have come up with these wacky names. Now, why they feel they need them, I don't know. Will anybody ever use them? I don't think so, but it's an odd thing. And the other thing I thought was a bit odd yesterday is Health Canada saying, well, now that we've officially licensed these vaccines, we hope that people have more confidence in them. Thinking, wow, like what's been happening the last 6 months? We're just supposed to start having confidence now. They were still kind of dodgy when we were taking them, but it's not Health Canada's fault. But it is.
Right.
It's a goofy thing, and it's funny. I guess.
Well, I guess normally they would have names for these kinds of things, right? I mean, those are the.
I would never know what they were because, you're given a vaccine by a doctor. You don't ask those kind of details. It's only in the pandemic we've said we vaccine shopped. This one versus that one, and what are the merits? And really, got down to it, but it just seems a bit the wrong note to me for the manufacturers to give them names that make people laugh out loud, because we really do have to have faith that these are like serious companies and they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And when you see a vaccine from Pfizer, it's like, oh, Pfizer, I know those guys, a big company, a lot of expertise. But when you put a goofy name on it, you can't even pronounce.
Yeah, Comirnaty is their name. Comirnaty.
The other one is Spikevax.
Yeah, that's Moderna's, and then it's Vaxzevria. Vaxzevria, I believe, is AstraZeneca's. I'm a Vaxzevria Spikevax guy myself. All right, let's move on to something else here. We had a little fun off the top, but I want to talk about, Ottawa's voting pattern is heavily liberal. This is probably a question that's difficult to answer, but any notion why that's been the case for so long, Randall?
My sense of that is because it's obviously a government town with a huge number of people working in the federal public service, and by and large over time the public services tended to get bigger under liberal governments and a little bit smaller under conservative governments. So if you're looking at it that way, you'd say, well, they're more public service friendly than the conservatives are. I don't know whether they really are, but they're perceived to be that way. At least they hire more people. And if you're somebody who wants to do more progressive things in the public service, the Liberals are more likely to do them. So I think it's partly that, but it's also that I think we're just we're stuck in a pattern here. We don't really think enough about our votes. Like, well, I always vote Liberal, I'll vote Liberal, or I always vote Conservative, I always vote NDP. We don't tend to weigh the individual candidates very much.
That's for sure.
And we don't even weigh the party platforms, I don't think, quite enough. And the point I'm trying to make in my citizen column this week is that we hurt ourselves by doing this because, rule of politics. If a party says, we're going to win all the seats except one in Ottawa, we don't really need to spend time there. We don't need to promise anything for them. We've got those seats. So let's move on to someplace where we can get other seats. And, conversely, another party, Conservatives or any of the others, would look and say, Ottawa, we're not going to win anything there except the one seat we've got, so let's not spend too much time in Ottawa. I mean, to their credit, I think the Conservatives this time have spent more time in Ottawa, focused more on Ottawa than they typically would. And what I'm, suggesting in the column is, maybe people should respond to that, because if you look at Quebec, Derek, I mean they are the masters in the country of an election. All right, well everybody bring your offers forward, and we will consider your offers, and whoever brings the best offer, you'll get our support.
That's true. Yeah.
We don't care which one. Who's got the best offer for us?
It's a great point.
We are the dead opposite of that here. There are certain ridings in Ottawa that they've literally been liberal forever and probably will be liberal forever. I mean, that's fine if that's what people believe in, but it does let them take Ottawa for granted, and I think we've seen that again in this election.
Yeah. So are there any ridings in Ottawa at all where the Conservatives have a chance?
There are. I think there's two where they should have a good chance, and probably will. One is Nepean, which they hold provincially. The other one, Canada Carleton, same thing. PCs hold it provincially. So there's a recent history there of voters being willing to choose a Conservative candidate, which is, makes it attractive ground for that party. Aaron O'Toole, the Conservative leader, has promised the extension of Stage 3 LRT to Canada, which I think is an important promise for Canada. The Canada Liberal candidate on her own has said, yeah, we'll do that too. But, it hasn't come from the Central Party. And
that's right, yeah.
Generally speaking, candidates really can't make commitments for hundreds of millions of dollars. So that's a plus in the Canada Carleton riding. But they're both those kind of, quintessential suburban ridings. And Canada Carleton, more of a rural part to it as well. But they're the type of ridings that Conservatives have done well in the past. So if they're going to win even a minority on Monday, these are the kind of ridings that they need to take. And in both those ridings, they have candidates that I think are strong. Jennifer McAndrew in Canada Carleton, Matt Treemstra in Nepean. They're both, 40-ish people, a lot of life experience, good education, community involvement. They're the kind of people you want to be MPs. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the Liberal candidates necessarily, but there's certainly nothing at the candidate level that would make a voter say, well, all right, maybe I like the party a bit, but gee, I can't vote for that person. These are both people that are pretty easy to vote for.
Yeah, for sure.
And the Conservatives put some effort into finding people who are good candidates. And I think that voters need to think about that. And when a party makes an effort, think about rewarding it. Because if we don't do that, we're just right back where we started from. Yep, all Liberals except the one. So it just reinforces the don't waste your time here message.
Let's have a little fun to end things off here. Let's talk some predictions, Randall. What is your prediction for the election? Who is going to win, minority or majority, and will they lose or gain some seats?
It's hard to see anybody getting a majority. They're certainly not the Conservatives. I don't see how the Liberals get to a majority with the numbers they've got in the campaign they've run. I was feeling Conservative minority was a pretty good possibility. It's really hard to say looking at the polls, though, Derek, because mostly what we see here are the national numbers. They don't mean much. You could win 80% of the vote in some riding. That's one. You could win by 1% in another riding. That's one. So it's really, of course, any election is a series of riding level battles. And even when we look at provincial support, it's still mask that. Well, how close are they in ridings? And we just don't know.
Yeah.
So I think that, a lot of ridings could go by a very narrow margin, and depending which way they go, that'll determine the government. It's just unfortunate, I think, for the Conservative Party that the People's Party of Canada, as they call themselves, they've attracted considerable support.
Yeah, they've made some pretty surprising gains. I think I would say at first surprising, but I don't think it's surprising now because he's certainly, I think Bernier's done a good job catering to the furthest of the right wing, right? And he had to find his niche, and he's found it.
Yep, he's made the most of his anti-vax stand, which isn't a sensible stand in my opinion, but nevertheless it's an opinion shared by some people. So he's made the most of that political opportunity. But what he's doing really is helping to ensure another Liberal government, which would be the last thing I think his own supporters would want. So to me, I get why people would think, Aaron O'Toole, he's not conservative enough. Max Bernier, he's my guy. I understand that thinking, but if people are thinking just a little bit more strategically, you think, okay, but my People's Party of Canada person is not going to get elected, and I'm just helping a Liberal get elected. So do I really want a Liberal government again if I'm a People Party of Canada person? I don't think so. So I hope most people think a little bit before they vote.
Yeah, I agree. It's something to think about. Randall, thanks so much for joining me. Real pleasure talking to you. All right, take care. That's Randall Denley, author and Ottawa Citizen columnist. Coming up after the break, it's the Talk Back Hour. That's the Friday free-for-all. Anything goes. Give us a call, 750-1310. This is Derek Phage filling in for Rob Snow right here on Rogers TV and City News.
WW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, the 17th of September. Good morning. I'm Chris Curries. Right now in Ottawa, 15 degrees, a mix of sun and clouds. It's 18 and mainly sunny in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. A West End city councillor is wondering why so many school bus routes in his and nearby wards were cut. Alan Hubley of Canada North says 55% of bus routes that were cut by the Ottawa Student Transportation Authority and in 3 West End wards were including his own. And he's written a letter to them wondering what the criteria was that meant bus routes weren't more evenly distributed around the city. He says this has resulted in students being transferred to OC Transpo routes.
But under the OC Transpo routes, like the regular routes, it would mean transferring multiple times, and it takes up to an hour and a half to 2 hours one way for a student to get there. So, they're making 3 hours of their day all part of a commute.
Hubley says this just simply isn't feasible, and he's heard from a number of parents that say it's having them consider pulling their children out of specialized schools with no direct bus service. Ottawa Public Health expanding its immunization services at its 4 community vaccination clinics to include routine and catch-up immunizations for eligible children and youth. In addition to providing COVID-19 vaccines for people born in 2009 or earlier, starting today they'll offer by appointment only publicly funded immunizations for eligible children and youth aged 0 to 17. So think the measles, chickenpox, or tetanus. Those clinics at the U of O Minto Sports Complex, J.H. Putnam School, Eva James Memorial Center, and the Orleans Family Ruddy YMCA. Full details are up on our website at ottawa.citynews.ca. We're heading into the final weekend of the federal election campaign, and party leaders making their pushes in some key ridings in Ontario, Quebec, and Nova Scotia. Our Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney has more.
As federal party leaders approach the finish line in this election, they're going to say and do all they can to secure your vote. At a stop in Windsor, Liberal leader Justin Trudeau trying to highlight the differences between him and rival Conservative leader Erin O'Toole.
Do we move Canada forward, or do we take Canada back? Mr. O'Toole has been very, very clear. He doesn't think we should be doing everything we need to end the pandemic for good.
Meanwhile, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is in Sherbrooke, Quebec, before heading to Nova Scotia for a pair of stops. Erin O'Toole in London, Ontario, and St. Catharines, and Green leader Annamie Paul is in Toronto. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News time is 10:05. One person dead after an ATV rolled south of Castleman. Ontario Provincial Police responded to a single vehicle crash on County Road 12 in Finch just before 8 a.m. this morning. Police say the initial investigation shows the driver of the ATV lost control and the vehicle rolled. The adult man driving the ATV was pronounced dead at the scene. The OPP continues to investigate the cause of the crash. And U.S. President Joe Biden holding a virtual forum on climate change today, bringing together world leaders to talk about reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Biden says wealthier countries are taking the lead.
Countries representing more than half of the global GDP are committed to taking steps that will keep us within reach of our joint pursuit of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius.
Biden in April announced a U.S. goal to cut emissions in half by 2030 from record high 2005 emission levels. Now let's take a look at your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, there is a chance of showers, isolated storms today, but most areas just sun and cloud. The high 27 will feel like 34 with the humidity. Becoming cloudy tonight, rain overnight 17 for the low, and for the weekend, plenty of sunshine, highs near 24. For today, the high 27.
And I'm Chris Curries. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Oh boy, this is going to be a fun hour. It is going to be a lot of fun. Derek Phage here from Rogers TV, filling in for Rob Snow. The final weekday before we go to the polls, ladies and gentlemen. And look at that. All our lines booked. For those of you trying to get through, be patient. Be patient, okay? We're going to take some calls pretty quickly off the top here, but let me just remind you, it's Friday. So that means it's the Friday free-for-all on the Talkback Hour here on the Rob Snow Show. We don't pick the topics, you pick the topics. We, of course, like to stick to things that are in the news, but maybe there's something not in the news that you think should be. Give us a call, 750-1310. Now, we also opened up the lines early in the week about complaints about city government. If you didn't get on the air and you have a gripe about municipal government, now is your chance for that as well. 750-1310. So many gripes, and you heard it in our newscast in this city, that Ottawa bylaw came out to the media yesterday and said they don't think they can handle it. Bylaw officers are so inundated with calls that the complaint volume has become unsustainable. It seems they always have enough officers to give poor David here. Give poor David parking tickets when he's 5 minutes past the time on the meter on Elgin Street. Maybe you're just being targeted, David. Who knows?
It's predatory enforcement.
It could be. It could be. They say that in many municipalities, an individual bylaw officer deals with between 400 and 600 calls per year. And hats off, by the way, if you're a bylaw officer listening to this show, that's got to be one of the most difficult jobs in the entire world, right? Honestly. Chapman told the Community and Protective Services Committee on Thursday that individual bylaw officers deal with between 400 and 600 calls per year. And while Ottawa officers can likely handle more than that, they're currently facing about 900 calls each. 900 calls! And, across the country, guess who makes more complaints than any other region in Canada? It's us! We're number one! We're number one! Oh, my God. It's good to be number one, isn't it? So, people do love to complain in this city. If you're one of them, give us a call, 750-1310. But again, I'll mention it's the Friday free-for-all. And our lines are lit up, so we're going to dive right into it here. Let's head over to Dave from Ottawa. He wants to talk about school COVID cases. David, welcome to the show.
How you doing this morning, Derek?
I'm very good. Dave, how are you?
I'm a first-time caller.
Okay.
I love listening to Rob, and I think you're just as good as Rob, buddy.
Well, thank you very much, Dave. I appreciate that.
Here's what I want to mention.
Okay.
I think the Ford government could have did a little better with the school system. You know what I mean? Because I listened to CTV News yesterday at noon.
Okay. Should never do that, Dave.
Why's that?
Listen to CTV News.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, I'm just kidding, Dave. I'm just kidding.
Okay. Sometimes I take things the wrong way, but I know you're joking with me.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
You got a good sense of humor. That's how I can tell. Anyways, I listened to Patricia Bull, and she was interviewing Andrea Horvath, and Andrea Horvath was giving her was telling her how we could have avoided some of these cases being so high. And I was talking to my dad last night, and my dad says, if you're going to talk to them on the air, talk about maybe what the parents could have done to help the situation.
Okay.
And my father says maybe they could have put the kids in a more like little cohorts and having parents get together and maybe not hiring a tutor, but having parents get together by working with kids maybe at home just to keep this a little bit, try to keep the cases lower until we get a vaccine for the kids 5 and up.
So the suggestion being try to keep more kids at home doing homeschooling or doing online schooling? Is that the idea, Dave?
Absolutely, or maybe parents that could afford it, maybe try to have private tutors coming in to help them, but make sure that people that are working with the kids are already totally vaccinated.
Yeah.
Make sure the kids always have masks on. So they got to do more about maybe mandating even the teachers with. You can't tell somebody what to do, but I still think.
I think that's an issue. That's an issue, Dave, of labor laws, right? You're also seeing that just with Ontario rolling out the vaccine passport. I mean, if you're an employee at a restaurant, you don't necessarily have to be vaccinated. Perhaps the employer has it as part of their policy, but they're saying that due to labor laws, it's a difficult thing to do. And I would imagine with the teachers union, that's going to be the same situation, right?
Right, and you can't, and like what they say, it's a choice. You can't force anybody to do anything, but the parents have the rights maybe to say, okay, I'm going to try to keep my kids safe because I don't want my kids to get sick, and then if the mom and dad are not fully vaccinated, then that could lead to them maybe getting sick, and they could be like what Andrea Horvath said. We could be doing more to keep these cases a little bit lower. But thank God we're going to have a vaccine for the kids 5 and up. I think that's supposed to start in a couple of weeks or something like that.
Well, I haven't heard about that quite yet, David, coming that quickly, but that is certainly a hope for many people. Dave, thanks so much for your call. Really appreciate you.
Always nice to talk to you, Derek, buddy.
All right, take care, Dave. And that's an interesting thing. When Dave talks about, parents staying at home and doing homeschooling and online learning and that sort of thing, we heard from so many parents that say how difficult that's been for them, especially with parents that, you think, oh, well, you're working from home. What's the big deal? It's very distracting, right? Kids will be kids and they're distracted as well. There's a lot of things. They've done a really good job. The public health units, I will say, have done a very good job of contact tracing and shutting down a school for short periods of time when they do have cases. Let's move on to George from Ottawa. George, good morning. Thanks for calling the Rob Snow Show. What do you want to discuss today? Are you there, George? Oh, we've lost George. Okay. Give us a call back, George, if you want to get back in. We have one line open, 750-1310. Let's go to Roger in Drummond. Roger, what would you like to talk about today?
Good morning, Derek.
Good morning.
There's a few things I want to talk about. First of all, you're a class act. You're doing a bang-up job to fill in for Rob.
Thanks, Roger. Appreciate it.
Now, there's a few things I want to talk about. One of them is one of these election ads there that the Liberals put out there about all these assault rifles. I didn't know there was 1,500 of them in the first place, and that kind of took me off guard.
Right.
But the fact is, when Stephen Harper was Prime Minister, he put legislation in there for people committing crimes with guns, whether it's a fake gun, a real gun, loaded gun, unloaded gun. 5 years with no plea bargaining, in the federal penitentiary. Kind of cut back on some of the gun crime. These gangbangers aren't going around with assault rifles for a start. They're usually handguns or maybe the odd sawed-off shotgun, and it's pretty obvious, like what happened in Hamilton yesterday, what happened in Ottawa, was it yesterday or last night, with another shooting,
And a lot of these guns, where are they coming from? I mean, that's the other thing, Roger. I mean, you're talking about criminals and they will find, and by the way, the cross-border between the U.S. and Canada now, of course, with COVID perhaps have changed a little bit, but there's been a lot of cross-border of guns coming over into Canada from the U.S. as well, and you can't track those, right?
Well, yes, Derek. But the thing is, most of those guns are coming in from the States, and then the odd ones being ripped off from somebody's home.
Yes.
But the fact is, when Trudeau come into power, he took this law away that Stephen Harper put in, because it was just too cruel and unusual punishment for these gangbangers and whoever's using these illegal guns. Okay. So, I mean, if you look at statistics from the last 6 years, gun crime has gone up exponentially all over this country, Now, another thing I want to talk about is Aaron O'Toole. I wish he would have been a bit more forthright with his answers there when he was asked about the situation in Alberta,
Oh, yeah, I agree.
But that said, Derek, he's not the Premier of Alberta, and he's been saying time and time again that the territorial leaders and premiers, they have to deal with their situation. They're the ones that are holding the power and making those decisions.
For sure. But I mean, I think you could have been a little more honest, and maybe you're not going to say necessarily what Jagmeet Singh said and say that he's done a horrible job, but I think he could have been a little more honest, saying yes, Premier Kinney has struggled with COVID-19 and he hasn't done the best of jobs, and if I was Prime Minister, I would have worked more closely with him. I mean, there's a lot of things you could have said that would have sounded a little more like a leader as far as I was concerned.
And one more thing, Derek.
Yep.
Justin Trudeau, he's crowing about having Jean Chrétien endorsing him. Well, there's a bastion of honesty and decency there. We'll talk about the Grand Mare Hotel, the golf course in Shawinigan, and that scam, And the fact that they go around in the hospitals, they're not wearing masks, they have a big entourage, they're not social distancing with their big gathering they had there with Hazel McClellan and Jean Chrétien,
Yeah.
This guy's a real piece of work, and calling an election for what?
I know. Well, that's what everyone's asking the question. Roger, thanks so much for your call. I mean, that's a big question, right? And I'm one of those people who say, you're calling it for personal gain. You looked at the polls, your advisors looked at the polls, it looked like you had a chance at a majority, and you might have just, messed us all up with spending $600 million plus on an election to get a minority government again, and we'll be back in the same boat in 18 months to 2 years. It's incredibly frustrating. All right, one line open, 750-1310. This is the Talk Back Hour. It's a Friday free-for-all. Anything goes. Almost anything. 750-1310. Derek Phage here filling in for Rob on Rogers TV and City News.
So the birth of absinthe was 2002, I think, 2003, and I was working at Urban Bistro, happily, where Allium is now. And then the space where Holland Cafe was came up. It's on the corner of Spencer and Holland. And I spoke to the landlord, and there's a lot of interest from a lot of other people, but he and I just, got along super well, and he put a lot of faith in me. So Carmen Turner is his name. He gave me the lease to the place and really pretty much gave me all the equipment in the place. So I was really lucky. I've been really lucky with landlords that way, actually, both my current landlord and Carmen Turner. Because if there hadn't been Carmen Turner, there wouldn't have been absinthe. So we were there for a few years. and just sort of outgrew the place. And then now we're here. It's obviously been tough, and it's been tough for everyone. I mean, that's been the big democratic sweep of like in restaurants and the hospitality and the arts that we were talking about earlier. It's like everybody's been impacted pretty much the same. From everybody that I talked to, we're down 80%. We're climbing out now. I think one of the saddest things is like we went down to 2 employees from 25, and we're now at 4, and we're bringing 2 new people on this week, so we'll be at 6. So it's little steps. So it's been tough. It's I've got the most expensive clubhouse ever here, because some days you come and you don't do any business, but you're here. But I'm grateful for what I do have. I think everybody's optimistic now, not necessarily just about the vaccine, but about like the vaccine, spring, being able to be outside. I think you're going to see a lot of like pop-up things happen in parking lots and on sidewalks and like that, rather than being actually inside somebody's commerce. I think we'd like to take it outside. I know my staff would. My staff like the outdoors now all of a sudden, all 4 of us. 6 soon. But we'll be doing some business in the patio in the parking lot, and we have a patio out front. And I hope other restaurants and stores will do the same. I hope that they take advantage of like the sidewalk and doing sort of, guerrilla marketing and stuff like that, and really shaking it up a bit. You can find us at Absinthe Cafe at 1208 Wellington Street West in Hintonburg, and you can find us online at absinthecafe.ca.
The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
The Rob Snow Show continues, minus the Rob Snow portion of the show, because Rob is off this week. Derek Phage here, filling in for Rob. Oh boy, let's look at some of the numbers, okay, before we get to our next call. Latest breakdown from Abacus Data. Okay, they put these numbers out last night. This is the freshest look at the playing field with 3 days left. We've got 3 days left, okay? Liberals have opened up a clear national lead over the Conservatives, 34 to 30%, with the NDP at 21%, the Bloc at 6%, and the People's Party at 5%. The Liberals have a 9-point lead in Ontario, 13-point lead in Quebec, and 25-point lead in Atlantic Canada. The Conservatives lead in the Prairies, while the Conservatives and NDP are tied in BC. 53% of those who have voted or definitely plan to vote say it's definitely time for a change of government. 53% who have voted or definitely plan to vote say it's definitely a time for a change of government. Interesting. Whereas 23% say it's definitely best to keep the Liberals in office. Only a 1-point change from yesterday. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh has the most favorable image at plus 18, while Mr. Trudeau, Mr. O'Toole, and Ms. Paul all have net negatives. Mr. O'Toole's image has continued to get worse, while Mr. Trudeau's has improved just slightly from yesterday. Again, these are polls. Take what you want from them, okay? 30% of those who haven't voted but have a first preference say they could still change their mind before the vote. 30%. Still, you know what? I prefer voting Conservative, or I could prefer voting Liberal, or say they could still change their mind. 4% of voters are entirely undecided. 4%. All right, let's take some more calls here. Let's head over to Chris in Canada, who wants to talk about the school bus situation. Chris, good morning.
Morning, Derek. So first off, the city loves to hack and slash OC routes like a mad, angry Edward Scissorhands. To the sky, we get a bunch of complaints about transit. Now, the reason, and it's an uneducated but visual guess, is Stittsville and Canada South are flush with cash. You have 3 to 4 vehicles in every driveway, a lot of stay-at-home moms, So if you have to really make the hard decisions, you're certainly not going to cut Bayshore bus routes where it's flush with low income when you have that big extra gap in Canada and Stittsville.
Okay. Now, I mean, OC Transpo bus cuts, I think, Chris, we can safely say that a lot of it has to do with low ridership due to the pandemic, right? We've been in a few lockdowns now, and they've had to, they've had to cut back, right? I think they were forced to do so. Are you saying just... Go ahead, Chris, sorry.
Yeah, no, for sure. And when the OC, when the train isn't working, especially in the cold days, when they had 18 buses idling down where the Ottawa Lynx used to play, maybe they could reroute some of those empty idling buses and help out some of the kids.
Yeah, nothing frustrates me more than seeing idling city vehicles of any kind. I'll say that. I mean, it's like, oh, it's free gas. Let's just sit here for the next half hour and enjoy the air conditioning. Chris, thanks so much for your call. Really appreciate it. Let's head to David in Ottawa South, who wants to talk about the election. David, what are your thoughts on the election?
Well, I got two things, but let's first get to the election.
Okay.
This idea of strategic voting, I don't want Trudeau to get back in. I don't like the PC, so I'm going to vote whoever else.
Okay.
As I've been saying, that's a vote for Trudeau, because whoever else is likely not to take the seat and definitely not going to form the government. So you're handing Trudeau exactly what he wants on a platter.
Right. Well, and Trudeau is arguing, on his side of things, saying if you vote NDP, you could be taking away a Liberal vote. So strategically, if you were thinking of voting NDP, you should be voting Liberal because you don't want to go backwards and end up with another Conservative government, those horrible people.
Exactly. And that's another thing, too, that the Liberals are gone back to their same old tricks, and that's the scary monster thing, the abortion issue, for example. That's not going anywhere. So O'Toole has said he's not going to block people in his party from bringing forth an issue. So if some backbencher wants to talk about abortion, let him go ahead. It's not going to go anywhere. So that's just...
Yeah, I think, as far as O'Toole's concerned, it would just be so incredibly helpful for him if everybody got on board to continue to bring... And I mean, the Liberals are the ones that bring this up all the time.
Yeah, now I want to get on my second topic very briefly, and that's kind of coming from that, especially with the PPC and their anti-vaxxers, hesitant vaxxers thing.
Okay.
And what's happening out in Alberta, rising numbers here in Ontario, in fact, all across Canada. It's going to lead to gridlock in the ORs again.
Yeah.
And as a person who's potentially a heart surgery person, not a transplant, but for a couple of valves that would need to be replaced, I just want to say to all those people who are not getting vaccinated and who are going to block up the operating rooms and stuff, thank you very, 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 very much. I mean, your affair of things, or your knuckle-dragging crap is going to keep me from getting my heart surgery. Just thank you very, very much.
David, appreciate the call. Thank you very much. And David, that sentiment I've heard from others as well. There's a lot of people frustrated. There's a lot of surgeries that have been delayed and rescheduled. I have a friend of the family whose grandfather had his heart surgery rescheduled now 3 times. 3 separate occasions. By the way, Ontario cases, just to give you an update, 795 cases, 5 deaths province-wide. We have 64 in Ottawa, 4 in Renfrew County. Eastern Ontario Health Unit is reporting 21, and Leeds, Grenville, Lanark reporting 3. Speaking of vaccines, let's head over to Chris in Blackburn Hamlet, who wants to talk vaccine passports. Chris, go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Derek.
Oh, you're welcome.
This week.
Thank you.
I'm going to argue against David's point there.
Okay.
Look at the situation, for example. Well, okay, next week, so you won't be able to go to a Red Blacks game if you're not fully vaccinated.
Right.
So if that's someone like David would agree with that, but then my question to him is, well, we had 2 home games already, 15,000 people. The vaccinated people who were in the stadium were rubbing shoulders with the, unclean 10 or 5% who were not vaccinated, and nothing happened. So why are you all of a sudden afraid now? If you're using that logic, then the only people that should have been in the stadium were unvaccinated people. And the same thing goes for restaurants. Like today, I'm going downtown, actually. I'll be looking at all the restaurants and people inside restaurants. Well, there is going to be unvaccinated people in restaurants down in the market, but that shouldn't be the case. If your logic is, I don't want to be sitting beside a table with unvaccinated people, why are you going to the restaurant today then?
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily about infection control. It's about encouraging vaccinations. That's why they've turned to the vaccine passport systems in many regions around the world, because they're trying to I mean, the more people that get vaccinated, the science has shown us the less cases, the less deaths that we're going to have, the less severe COVID-19. And Alberta should be a pretty good example of that, Chris.
It's not about safety then. So I've heard people call into the talk show over the last few weeks and months saying, well, I want to be able, even Jim Watson said, I want to be able to go into a restaurant and feel safe. So you're not going to restaurants now? Like when I go downtown,
well, some people aren't.
Restaurant.
Some people aren't, Chris. I went to my first event this week called Feast of Fields down at City Hall. It was outdoors. Everyone had to be double vaccinated. I'm not going to lie to you. It was refreshing. I felt for the first time a lot safer and in a healthier environment than I felt in a long time.
And what's wrong with the football team, the Red Blacks?
Well, because they couldn't put it in place quick enough, right? They what they were trying to do is respect the fact that, listen, if you're a Red Blacks fan, we're going to give you time to get vaccinated. Chris, I got to let you go. I really appreciate the call, though. We got to take a quick break. Again, 750-1310 is the number. It's the Friday free for all here on the Talkback Hour. Derek Phage filling in for Rob on Rogers TV and City News.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, September the 17th. Good morning, I'm Chris Curries. Right now in Ottawa, we've got some mostly cloudy skies, 18 degrees. In Smiths Falls, mainly sunny, 21, feels like 27. Here's what's making news this hour. The new COVID data is in, and there are 795 new cases today in Ontario. Of those, 64 are in Ottawa, 4 in Renfrew County, 21 in Eastern Ontario, and 3 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. This from over 33,700 tests. There are 5 people who have died from the virus. Some critically ill COVID-19 patients in Alberta could be flown to Ontario for treatment. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney's government is in talks with Ontario and several other provinces to avert an even deeper healthcare crisis that could cause their healthcare system to collapse in a little more than a week. COVID-19 cases began surging after Kenney lifted almost all restrictions on Canada Day, proclaiming the battle was over and he didn't foresee hospital cases rising to alarming levels again. And an Ottawa City Councillor is demanding to know why so many school bus routes have been cancelled in the Canada and Stittsville area this month as school bus operators deal with a driver shortage. In a letter to the Ottawa Student Transportation Authority, Alan Hubley says he has, quote, questions regarding the recent cuts to service due to the driver shortage, including how officials determined which routes to cut. Hubley says he's been informed that 55% of cancelled routes are from 3 wards. City News time is 10:33. I'm Chris Curries. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derek Phage here filling in for Rob. Again, that number, 613-750-1310. It's the Friday free-for-all on the Talk Back Hour. Anything goes, and our lines are lighting up. It's because you're thinking, oh, Derek, this is your final day this week. Rob is back. We need to get our talks and our opinion into you before you walk away. I appreciate it. Let's head over to Cindy in Canada who wants to talk daycare. Cindy, let's talk daycare. How are you this morning?
I'm very good.
Excellent. What are your thoughts on daycare?
Well, the $10 a day daycare, everybody's chanting like if it's a very good thing. Mm-hmm. I lived in Quebec for 30 years, and
okay.
I have my son there. The system is so difficult to get access to, and
because of lack of spots, Cindy?
Lack of spots, and also because it's universal, sometimes people that don't work, that are on social insurance, to just put their kids in daycare, taking spots from people that are working. So it's very difficult to manage it. And I wish that when they talk about it, they also look at how difficult it is on the province, like who has the emergency ward that closed. They can't keep up having emergency ward closed and part-time emergency in Gatineau. That's a major city there.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
They have $10 a day daycare, but it's costing them from other areas. And so, do we really want to transfer that everywhere in Canada?
Well, and should it be one size fits all? That's the other thing, Cindy. So, when it comes to sort of that means, there's no means measurement from what I can see from the Liberal plan to have $10 a day daycare. So if you're low income, you get $10 a day daycare, and if you're a multimillionaire, you get $10 a day daycare, right? There's no means measurement from what I can see in the platform. And don't forget, this is their federal budget commits to bringing childcare fees to an average of $10 a day in regulated centers by 2025, 2026, right? So this is no guarantee. We could be back, if this is another minority Liberal government, we could be going to the polls again in 18 to 24 months.
Yeah, but I just want to take the gloss off that idea
right.
that $10 a day daycare, everything's going to be fine. I mean, Quebec has a more social fabric, so their nurses, their doctors, they make less so that they can try to afford these social measures.
Right. And Quebecers pay higher taxes as well. Cindy, thanks so much for your call. Really appreciate it. Let's head over to Bill in Ottawa South who wants to talk reconciliation, something we haven't heard a heck of a lot about during this election campaign. Thanks for your call, Bill. What are your thoughts on reconciliation?
Well, I find the Liberals' hypocrisy is stunning.
Okay.
There was a royal commission into the Laurier administration in 1911. And they found that Laurier's Liberals stole 37% of all reserve lands in Western Canada. And in the case of the Pheasants Rump Band in Saskatchewan, they took the whole reserve.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
There's a lot of issues to look at, Bill. There's no doubt about it, right?
Well,
when you look at the Truth and Reconciliation report, I mean that is a long report.
Well, they may look at how the Liberals contributed to so much of the distrust of government, and Canadians should know about those things because we want to know how we've been governed, and that commission, that Royal Commission, doesn't exist anymore. The Liberals said it was so aghast at all the findings in it that they destroyed every single copy of that Royal Commission.
Well, part of the problem too with Truth and Reconciliation is again, they talk a good game, but what are they doing? I mean, they've taken residential students, former residential students, to court. You know.
Yeah. I'm not so sure they do talk a good game, but...
yeah, well, yeah, that's true. I mean, it depends on what side you're looking at it from. That's for sure, Bill. Bill, thanks so much for your call. Really appreciate it.
Have a good day now.
Thanks, you too. Let's head over to Reagan from Renfrew, who wants to talk politics. Reagan, good morning. What do you want to talk about this morning?
Oh, I'd like to say a couple things about Aaron O'Toole's campaign, and maybe he could do a little better by getting on layman terms, like...
okay. In what manner?
Well, let's say, for example, that he likes to talk about, we just wasted $600 million on an election, which I agree with. But when you're saying that, why don't you say that $600 million could have went to build 2,000 or 3,000 single-family homes, or, different things like that, or even with the daycare? Sure, it's $10 a day daycare in 5 years, but you'll probably be paying $20 to $30 a day extra tax with inflation creeping in. Like, just explain a little better. Compare apples to apples. Like
right. No, that's a fair statement.
$500 million there means nothing to anybody, but you got to compare it to something. It just ticks me off. Like, does he want us laymen or commoners to come and run his campaign?
we may do a better job, Reagan.
Well, we get to the point and put in a few details.
Yeah.
No, it's all guilty of it, but...
Yeah, no, it's a great point to bring up, Reagan. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much for calling. Let's head over to Michelle in Ottawa South, who wants to talk election. By the way, we have, this is Derek Phage filling in for Rob Snow. We have one line open, 750-1310. Michelle from Ottawa South, what do you want to talk about this morning?
Oh, Derek, I was listening to your interview briefly there with Randall Denley, and we have these Liberal kingpin candidates. They're hard to take down, and I listened to your interview yesterday with great interest to Mr. Yasser Naqvi.
Right.
And, there they got a star guy stepping up, right? He was elected in 2007, and he made it all the way to the Attorney General under Kathleen Wynne. And yesterday he mentioned how he would partner with nonprofit housing, which I thought was, wow, that's amazing. And I would just like to say that if you'd like to know how it's done, he can ask Mr. Tanis from Ottawa South, who has never held elective office and managed to already have that done and completed.
Right.
So, I just think that sometimes we need to really look at what we're promised and what is delivered. And,
I agree, 100%.
Okay, second thing is I want to apologize because last Friday I called you and out of sheer emotion, because I was discussing the death of my cousin to brain cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Not only her, but her husband.
I remember the call. Yeah.
My cousin's children had to deal with the death of their mother and their father, and my cousin's daughter actually wrote a book that's on Amazon, and it's called Daughter.
Okay.
The choices those children had to make, and they couldn't go in to sit with their mother and father together, is unbelievable. So, can I condone photo op at a hospital during a pandemic? Absolutely not. But nor can I condone Justin Trudeau's remarks to an idiot protester with a vulgar, filthy mouth when he challenges him to go and take his rants to a hospital.
Yeah.
It's just as wrong as me saying I would have thrown more than stones. What I should have said was if I could throw broken hearts, I would have.
I appreciate that, Michelle. No, I appreciate you calling back and mentioning that. And you're right. I mean, words matter. And what Justin Trudeau, his rebuttal, and sometimes, as you just described, Michelle, thanks for the call, just described as sometimes emotions get the best of us and we say the wrong things at the wrong time. right? And I'm not excusing him necessarily. I'm just saying that, this is emotional times, right? When it comes, we're talking about an election, the most unprecedented time in our history, going through a global pandemic, and many of us frustrated that we're even having to go to the polls, myself included. Let's head over to Canada and speak to Mike. Mike in Canada wants to talk about the election. Mike, what do you want to talk about today?
Hey, happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Thanks very much for your call.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to mention that where we're going to vote on Monday is quite interesting. We're going to the Bridlewood Trails Retirement Residence.
Okay.
Don't you find that a bit odd during the fourth wave of a pandemic?
Well, I know that health and safety protocols have been put in place. When Justin Trudeau and that Michelle just mentioned, taking photo ops at hospitals, we heard from the CEO of that hospital. He said he welcomed the party leaders coming, that they have all the health and safety protocols in place, that these opportunities aren't happening, in the cancer ward. They're very controlled, and all measures have been put in place. So. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Mike. Maybe the optics for many people, Michelle in particular, who's lost a family member, it's difficult for her to see those sort of things. I'm just telling you from the hospital's perspective is that they have said that they are welcome. The leaders are welcome. Retirements home have said the same thing. The leaders are welcome to come. We will make sure that everybody is safe in these kinds of situations.
Yeah, and that could be true, but you just never know with this virus.
Mike, you make a great point for sure, as Michelle made. Thank you so much for your call, Mike. Really appreciate it. We have one line open at 750-1310. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with more of the Rob Snow Show and the Friday Free-for-All. This is Derek filling in for Rob, right here on Rogers TV and City News.
The Rob Snow Show, brought to you by Myers Automotive Group. Have you heard of Spirit of...
Papa Jack was started 14 years ago, really by accident more than anything. A friend of mine had bought a grocery store. A popcorn machine was in there. He didn't want it. I ended up by buying it. My family thought I was nuts. When I first said, come and pick up this popcorn machine, my son said, what the heck for? I won't use exact words. But anyway, we started, and it just kept on growing and growing. But at the time, I was the only one selling popcorn in Ottawa. But we persevered as a family, and here we are. So it's been very, very rewarding for my family and myself. And to see our brand name, Papa Jack, and Papa Jack came out of, I wanted something that was going to be very bilingual. So Papa. And then in Ontario, everybody called me Jack, even though my name is Jacques. In Quebec, it's fine, it's Jacques. But in Ontario, it was always Jack. So we married the two together, Papa, Jack. With the store that we have on Thurston Drive, it basically, the factory's in the back. If you come into the store, you can see how the popcorn is being made during the week. So it adds an extra layer of, you can see the sanitation, you can see how we do it. It's not like making popcorn. Most people thought when I started this, I was making popcorn in my garage or in my basement. No, never did. It was started in this building, in the back of the building, and then we kept growing and growing until what we have now. My daughter and my son came up with a brilliant idea to do a fundraiser online. So basically all people have to do is to register here, and we give them a special code number. And with that code number, they tell their friends or their neighbors, everybody, to buy online from us with that code number. And then at the end of each period, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, then we'll pay them a 20% of all the businesses that we got through that code number. One thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the Ottawa people who have supported us and support local businesses. It sometimes people, they talk about buying locally. Now it becomes that much more important to buy locally, to support your local businesses, because not too many of them are going to survive this. we're fortunate that we're so far so good.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derek Phage here, filling in for Rob Snow. It is the Talk Back Hour. It is the Friday free-for-all. It is your last chance. This is the final segment of the Friday free-for-all to get your opinions in. Anything goes. A lot of people want to talk election. Got some people who want to talk O'Toole and healthcare. Let's head over to Catherine in Lanark, who wants to talk about the election. Good morning. Catherine, what do you want to talk about?
Hi, Derek.
Hi there.
I just want to talk about Justin Trudeau's record.
Okay.
He's embarrassed us on the world stage, I don't know how many times.
Okay.
He's played divisive politics with Canadians.
He certainly has in this campaign. I think.
Well,
I think he's
also
changed his.
The biggest one that I can't understand how anybody can vote for him is that he has played politics with a deadly virus from the very beginning. He did close the borders. My daughter had COVID January 2020. He didn't close the borders to mid-March.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then he opened them not very long later, and then pointing fingers at other people. Like the premiers have been dealing with this virus, but Justin Trudeau left the international borders open.
Yeah, listen, Catherine, the border issue is one of the most frustrating things for me. I remember Mark Sutcliffe on the Power Lunch. I was a regular guest with Mark each and every Friday, and one of Mark's questions was, do you agree with the government closing, international travel to India and Pakistan? And I said, Mark, never mind just India and Pakistan. Close the damn borders to every country in the world. Yeah. What are we afraid of? I think that as far as leadership goes, I think that's one of the biggest negatives for Justin Trudeau is he's so afraid, right, to make a decision like that because he's worried about, foreign relations and the politics involved in doing that. If you're worried about it, shut it down for everybody. Right?
Well, and the worst part of it, anybody that was saying, shut the borders, he pointed at them and called them racist and bigot.
Well, I remember that too. Yeah, I remember that that was early on during the pandemic.
Now everybody's pointing at the unvaccinated and saying bad people. There's all kinds of
I don't think bad people is the right term, Catherine. Oh, yes. Listen, I've heard hatred. There's hatred from both sides, and I don't like the division that this has caused, and I certainly don't like the fact that Justin Trudeau is talking about it like the unvaccinated are not part of his Canada, and Aaron O'Toole, they are part of his Canada. If you're the leader of the country, all Canadians, you lead all Canadians. Thanks very much for your call, Catherine. You lead all Canadians, vaccinated or not, and we can have our debates about being. Listen, I will say this about the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated. The reason why we are back open for business, at least in a stage 3 situation here in Ontario, is because so many people got vaccinated. I mean, that is the only reason that we are open. That people did what they feel is their duty. I am one of them. I got vaccinated. I happily got vaccinated. I encourage people to do so. If you're hesitant, find out more about it. Speak to your family doctor if you have one. Speak to, there's different resources available, and make sure they're reliable resources. This is the other problem in this day and age of social media. People are, but there are 12 doctors that are against it, and here are the examples of them against it and why the vaccine is bad. That's compared to, by the way, thousands around the world. Okay, there's my 2 cents on that. Let's head over to Barry in Ottawa, who wants to talk healthcare. Barry, go ahead.
Good morning, Derek.
Good morning, Barry.
I just spent 2 weeks in the hospital. I'm not calling to call about my problems, but
okay.
Just problem of the nurses that I heard when I was in there that they haven't had a raise in 10 years. And, as one nurse said to me, the fire department, the police department, a lot of public service unions can get raises on a regular basis, but it hasn't helped out
Yeah, well, and we've been calling them in particular, different levels of government have been calling them our heroes and so forth. But are we really treating them like that, right? When it comes to things like salary and hours and so on.
That's what the one nurse told me, Derek, is that, you can give them all the praise and congratulations and everything for doing such a good job through COVID and all that. But as far as I'm concerned, I think the nurses have just as dangerous a job as firemen or police. They face people that have deadly diseases and stuff like that.
And people in with mental health issues, situations that become violent. I agree with you, Barry. Barry, thank you very much for your call. Appreciate it, and just getting the perspective too from nurses. Let's head over to Bill in Bracebridge, who wants to talk politics. Bill, what would you like to discuss today?
Good morning.
Good morning.
You do a good job. Great show.
Thank you very much, Bill. Appreciate it.
Catherine phoned in. I think she misspoke. She said Trudeau's record. I think what she meant to say was his rap sheet.
What's on his rap sheet as far as you're concerned, Bill?
Okay. Well, the hypocrisy of him looking down his nose at Jason Kenney for opening up Alberta. Didn't Trudeau just open up Canada for an election, for a vanity election for himself?
Okay, touche. Nice blow. I like it, Bill. The situation in Alberta is not surprising, unfortunately. But again, this is it's taking it political again. We're talking about the health and welfare of people, and then we're turning this into something political. And I'm talking about Trudeau himself. Is criticizing, sure. But maybe share some ways that you would work with him, that you would work with the provinces to help different situations, right? I just think the attacks are getting frustrating.
Well, the problem is, who knows what to believe? Israel's one of the most vaccinated countries in the world. They're on their third and fourth shots, and the rates are exploding over there. So. And I look at U.S. college football games. They got 100,000 people in the stands. They seem to be going back to normal. So
but if you look at the numbers in the U.S., I mean, the numbers do not look good, Bill. I mean, the numbers are going up. The amount of deaths have gone up exponentially.
Yeah, but I don't know whether the deaths. I think they used to report deaths. Now they just report rates. And the one last thing is, Theresa Tam's been on a 4-week. Well, I'm not sure if her name's Teresa, but Dr. Tam?
Yeah.
She's been on a 4-week vacation, and all of a sudden, 4 days before the election, she's out there just giving it because of Alberta.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure.
I mean, it's politics, my friend.
Yeah, no, Bill, a lot of it has turned into politics. Bill, thanks very much for your call. A lot of it, as I just said, has turned into politics. Tam has not been on a 4-week vacation. I can guarantee you that. She has come out and talked about it. I mean, when there's a huge issue like we're seeing in Alberta, you can't deny the fact that you're going to hear from someone like Theresa Tam, Dr. Tam. Let's get over to Diane in Nepean, who wants to talk about Aaron O'Toole. Diane, what are your thoughts?
Yes, the gentleman that phoned in and said that Aaron O'Toole spoke about the Prime Minister and the $650 billion cost.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that Aaron O'Toole didn't elaborate and say how the money could be used. But
right.
I think when I watched Aaron O'Toole in New Brunswick, he did elaborate about how the money could be used. So I just wanted to correct that statement.
Okay. No, appreciate that, Diane. Thanks very much.
He said the money could be used. I think I can't remember exactly, but I think he said I think he mentioned housing and COVID and a couple of other things. But I think that would be obvious that the money would be put.
I think it's obvious the money can be better used in a lot of different ways, regardless of what he had to say. Diane, thanks for the call. I just want to get to another. Tim would like to talk Bill 21. Tim from Ottawa. Tim, what do you want to talk about?
I can't believe we've reached a point in this country, watching the debate, when a question was asked about racism in Canada, that we've reached a point now you cannot even question what goes on in the province of Quebec.
Oh, and look at what's happened, right? So the Bloc Québécois has taken this and they're running with it. This is again the rest of English Canada not understanding Quebec.
So,
right?
So how can we ever understand if we can't ask a question?
Yeah, listen, I don't disagree with you, Tim. It's very frustrating, and again, I think it comes down to politics. This is the Bloc taking advantage of the situation and sensationalizing the situation and looking for votes. Thanks for your call. Let's go to John quickly from Mountain, and you'll be the last caller. John, what would you like to discuss?
Trudeau's lack of campaign platform and no need to deal with monetary policy, I think, is because he thinks either the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund is going to bail him out.
Well, I think sometimes the politicians like Justin Trudeau, and let's throw Jagmeet Singh in there as well. We're just going to print money and don't worry, the debt will take care of itself. John, thanks for...
No less than 12 of his cabinet ministers are either on the board of trustees or the stewardship of the World Economic Forum.
Right. John, thanks very much for your call. Really appreciate it. Thanks to everyone for your calls all week long, by the way. This is my final day. Rob returns on Monday, so really appreciate it. What a great Friday free-for-all. The lines were lit up the entire time. Thanks so much, and thanks for just the great, respectful chats that we've had throughout the entire week. I really appreciate it, regardless of whether we agree or disagree. Don't go anywhere. Lots more coming up here on The Rob Snow Show. This is Derek Phage filling in for Rob on Rogers TV and City News.
City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, September the 17th. Good morning. I'm Chris Curries. Right now in Ottawa, we've got some mainly cloudy skies, 19 degrees in Smiths Falls. It's 21, but it feels like 27 with the humidex. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Ontario seeing a drop in new COVID-19 cases today, with the province reporting a number in the 700s. Of those, 64 are in Ottawa, 4 in Renfrew County, 21 in Eastern Ontario. That's according to provincial reporting. 2 have been confirmed by the Leeds-Grenville-Lanark District Health Unit. Our Alex Bloomfield joins us with more on the provincial data.
795 new cases today, down from Thursday and down from last Friday as well, as the 7-day rolling average declined slightly. 5 new COVID-related deaths reported today, and ICU occupancy edged slightly higher to 194. Now, of the new cases, 26% among the fully vaccinated and 15% school-related. High testing for a second straight day with over 33,000 completed, so test positivity holds at 2.4%, and 35,000 vaccinations on Thursday. I'm Alex Bloomfield.
The Transit Commission chair has written to the Ottawa Student Transportation Authority wondering why so many West End routes have been cut from service. A bus driver shortage was always in the cards for the Transportation Authority, which meant some cancelled routes. But Alan Hubley says they are heavily centralized in the Canada area. Hubley says 55% of all cancelled routes have been cut from only 3 city wards, and he wants to know why.
I want them to give us the rationale, because myself and the 2 trustees are hearing from literally hundreds of families stranded with this, because, you might be a single parent, you could be parents, but you've got kids at other schools that, you're either walking them to that school or whatever. It makes it impossible for you to help this one child get there.
He's concerned that many of the cancelled routes were going to specialized programs like Canterbury and Merivale, with parents saying a commute might now take 3 hours on OC Transpo. Hubley adds that many are now considering removing their students from those specialized programs. One person is dead after an ATV rolled south of Castleman. Ontario Provincial Police responded to a single vehicle crash on County Road 12 in Finch just before 8 a.m. this morning. Police say the initial investigation shows the driver of the ATV lost control and the vehicle rolled. The adult man driving the ATV was pronounced dead at the scene. The OPP continued to investigate the cause of the crash. And candidate allegations and calls for strategic voting are dominating discussions on the campaign trail as party leaders get set to enter the final weekend of the federal election.
With sexual assault allegations surfacing about a Liberal candidate in Toronto, opposition parties calling on leader Justin Trudeau to dump this candidate. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh in Sherbrooke, Quebec claims the situation is one of 2 scenarios.
This candidate in Toronto lied to the Liberal Party, and the Liberal Party is okay with that, or the Liberal Party knew all along, and Mr. Trudeau is okay with that. Either way, it's horrible.
Liberal leader Justin Trudeau in Windsor says the party just found out yesterday about the allegations and is rapidly looking into the situation. They have asked the candidate to pause his campaign in the meantime. Meanwhile, the push is on for strategic voting. Trudeau asking NDP and Green supporters to look at his party's plan for climate, health care, child care, and gun control, and making the pitch that his is the only party to stop the Conservatives from what he says is moving the country backward. Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole is in London today. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
Now time to check your weather with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, there is a chance of showers, isolated storms today, but most areas just sun and cloud. The high 27 will feel like 34 with the humidity. Becoming cloudy tonight, rain overnight, 17 for the low, and for the weekend, plenty of sunshine, highs near 24. For today, the high 27.
And I'm Chris Curries. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derek Phage here filling in for Rob Snow. Of course, talking a lot of election on this show. We've been looking at, things across Canada. We've been looking at things in Ontario as well. I should mention that tomorrow from 10 a.m. till noon, we're going to be looking at specific ridings here in Ottawa, specific candidates in Ottawa. We'll have a complete rundown of everything for you from 10 a.m. till noon tomorrow, a special here on City News that you can tune into, and on Rogers TV, by the way. Candidates, if you're looking for some of the debates and want to hear what some of the local candidates have to say, you can visit their YouTube page, the Rogers TV YouTube page, and get caught up. We're going to turn our attention to Connecticut Carleton and speak to Melissa Conrad. She is the NDP candidate for Connecticut Carleton. Melissa, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Really appreciate you taking time out of what I imagine has been a busy schedule. A lot of people that perhaps some of our listeners don't know a lot about Melissa Conrad. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks. So, first of all, thank you for the invite. I'm happy to be here.
You're welcome.
It has been a chaotic, 6 weeks that we've been in, but I actually work at the Ottawa Hospital. I've been a lab technician for 18 years, and during this pandemic have been working at CHEO, testing COVID-19 samples. And as cases rise, I actually got a call the other day saying I may have to go back into work before the election is called because the number of samples is just going up so rapidly for testing. So that's been my challenge during this election, working and campaigning at the same time. But, I'm raising my family in Canada Carleton and have been involved in the last few elections, ran in 2019 and was involved in the provincial election prior to that. So it's been around for a little while, and I'm invested in trying to make, Canada Carleton with its, geographical challenges being both rural and urban, just kind of a better place, and make sure that all areas of the riding feel heard. I grew up in a really, really small rural town of only about 1,000 people, so even smaller than some of our ridings out here. And so I understand that kind of feeling of neglect sometimes by our rural constituents. So,
for sure, it's one of the most interesting and dynamic, I would say, ridings in the entire area, right? Just because of that.
Yeah, it's got its own challenges and its own, perks. We have the best cafes out in Carp, and I definitely like going out there. So
let's talk about priorities. So what are some of the priorities for federal leadership? If you became, the representative of Canada Carleton, what are some of the priorities in Canada Carleton for you on a federal level?
Right. So on a federal level, what I heard a lot about in 2019, and we're actually hearing a lot more about now, is pharmacare. I mean, the top two things are pharmacare and affordable housing out here. And, being in healthcare, I fully understand that once you implement a universal pharmacare program, you're leveling the playing field for people, but you're also keeping people out of emergency rooms a lot of times, right? If you can keep people healthy, you can keep their medication stable, you can keep their health stable, then you're keeping them out of emergency rooms because most people don't have family physicians.
Right.
And you can also keep them at work, keep them productive, keep them a part of the economy, which is advantageous for everyone. So that's definitely a platform priority for me.
Melissa, across the board, what about, sort of this, what I've discussed a little bit earlier on the show, is this kind of means measurement. So is it pharmacare, the same care, no matter whether you're low income or you're a multimillionaire? What kind of means measurement would the party have when it comes to pharmacare?
Right. So what we've seen in other countries, if you look to New Zealand, for example, and the pros and cons of their pharmacare, and you look at some other countries who have done well, in this income bracket, you're covered, and in this income bracket, you're not. They found the best way to really be able to bulk buy and work deals with all provinces is to have it for everyone. And so the NDP is saying that it's pharmacare for all Canadians, regardless of their income, because as we know, too, in this pandemic, you can go from being a high income earner down to your business completely shut down, losing money month over month very quickly.
Okay, so it's a good. I want to continue on. Sorry, I want to make sure we get to a few topics here. Healthcare is obviously something that you're incredibly passionate about. Let's talk about public health, not the pandemic, but the opioid crisis, because overdoses have disproportionately affected your riding more than others in the city. What are your plans to deal with this health crisis?
Yeah, so the opioid crisis is very, very dominant out here, and it's really been masked, if you will, by the pandemic, and we're just now really seeing the effects of that. And the NDP has been very clear. Even in 2019, we need to decriminalize opioids and really lessen that stigma so people want to get help, but we need to have help available. I mean, there isn't necessarily help available for people, like harm reduction measures, treatment measures, recovery, because you can't just walk into a hospital, get help for a couple of days, walk out without the opioid in your system, and think that that's the end of the recovery, because that's not the case, right? As we know, these addictions are a long-term recovery, and we haven't made those kinds of investments in Canadians right now there isn't treatment facilities and recovery facilities available like there is for, say, Alcoholics Anonymous. There aren't those check-in forums for people trying to recover from opioids at this point, and we need to change that, because as we've seen, those kinds of continual check-ins are advantageous to people as they're recovering from any sort of drugs.
Yeah, and I think, when it comes to, legalizing it, the argument always is, well, won't that encourage it? What do you say to people saying, well, if you make it legal, you're just going to end up encouraging the use of opioids?
Right. So, I mean, wasn't that the same statement that was made with marijuana? I mean, that's
yes, but I mean, I don't think we can necessarily compare the two drugs and their effects, right?
Fair. I think that's fair, but I don't think that you or I are going to go out and start taking opioids. I mean, it's an addiction issue that often people fall into, post-surgeries, pain medications that they then can't get off of.
Agreed, 100%. Yeah.
So it's not something that necessarily people are seeking out as a thrill. It's something they're happening into.
My last issue is LRT. Big issue for people in Canada. What about, are you committed to continuing this cost sharing of the LRT?
Yeah, the NDP has committed to cost sharing of LRT when it comes to any sort of green transit. So LRT falls under that. The NDP has said, yes, we are going to pay our fair share for green transportation for major cities. And so that would be the LRT coming out to Canada. We are currently the last stop in this project. Hopefully not the last stop in the end, because we need to connect, Stittsville and some of our outlying areas that are part of Canada Carleton as well. But the NDP has it right on their platform and has made that commitment to the federal government's share of these kinds of projects.
Melissa, really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule, of course, and, on behalf of our listeners and those watching, thank you so much. As a frontline worker, really appreciate everything that you've done and will continue to do through this pandemic.
Thank you so much for your time.
Take care. That's Melissa Conrad, NDP candidate in Canada Carleton, which is a really interesting race to keep an eye out on. I encourage you to look more into that particular race. We talked about it with Randall Denley a little bit earlier on in the show. And again, we'll have a special look at local ridings tomorrow, Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon. Tune in to City News. I mean, you're going to keep it locked here anyway, so why do I have to remind you? Steve Warren coming up next. Veteran Ottawa sports broadcaster, host of the Sens Nation podcast. Conflicting reports. Is Brady signing? Is he not signing? Is he coming to Ottawa? Is he coming to Ottawa? He's in St. Louis, but now I hear he's leaving St. Louis and he's going to go to, I believe, the University of South Dakota. I don't know what's going on here. You had Gordon Miller from TSN saying a deal could be done. It's imminent. Something's happening. And now I'm hearing it's not. And we have to talk about this new signing. The Red Blacks announcing they have signed former National Football League quarterback Devlin Duck Hodges to a 3-year contract. This is huge, by the way. To sign a quarterback at this point to a 3-year contract. You've got the Duck migrating up north here, which usually the opposite happens at this time of year, but we're going to catch up with Steve Warren to talk about that. And, of course, you've got the rookie camp, development camp just ended, rookie camp going on, and our first look at the rookies this Saturday. We'll be back with Steve Warren right after this. This is Derek Phage filling in for Rob Snow on Rogers TV and City News.
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our centre is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the centre. So one being obviously our emergency food program. which is really great. So residents can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre. We operate this great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our center the Ottawa Good Food Box as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years and Market Mobile is a little younger, started in 2014. So they both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had, layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derek Phage here filling in. Friends, help is on the way. What the heck is going on? Okay? I hear from Bruce Garriock. He writes, it's believed the Senators have offered 8-year, $64 million contract to Brady Tkachuk. Okay, same contract Thomas Chabot got. Gord Miller from TSN. He's on Montreal Sports Radio Wednesday afternoon. It looks like a deal could be done quickly. It's believed the deal would be long-term. And then you've got, Melnick is coming to town. Okay, maybe he's going to sign something. And now I got Sean Simpson saying Tkachuk is leaving St. Louis, heading to Ann Arbor. He's going to stay there until Thursday and then return to St. Louis, and saying now it tells me that nothing is imminent. I don't have the answers, but by God, let's hope. Veteran sports broadcaster, host of the Sens Nation podcast, Steve Warren, has some. Steve, how are you?
I'm good, Derek. I hope I have some answers for you, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be like everybody else, just speculate.
Yeah, the Sens sickos. You gotta feel for these guys. It's been a roller coaster ride of emotions over the last couple of weeks with Brady Tkachuk. I don't think, but okay, Steve. The reality of this though is it's not necessarily time to panic, is it?
Oh, there's no question. I think both sides would have wanted a deal done by now. We have camp starting next week. The home opener is like less than a month away. And this is a guy who could have been signed to an extension a year ago. So that, I think, is bothersome to a lot of Sens fans. But I think they've done a good job, I think, of keeping things amicable. Yeah. Because I feel like the quieter things are, the better. If things are going sideways and there's animosity seeping in, that's when you have both sides maybe feeding things to the media, and then things get, testy. But, it's a struggle, because if you're a Sens fan, you're hearing all the classic speculation phrases from the media. Mm-hmm. Things like, and you actually, I think, used one of them. The belief is,
right?
Right.
The speculation is like, what does that even mean, Derek? You've been in the media forever.
Yeah.
Like, whose speculation? Whose belief? You gotta
My
put somebody's
insiders
name on it.
say.
Yeah,
right?
all of those buzz around the league. You got to kind of put in somebody's name on it, or it just becomes meaningless. And there's been so much of it now over the last couple of months. I think that we've reached the saturation level with the average Sens fan. Now people are just going kind of now, all right, let me know when it happens, because I'm speculated out.
Yeah, I'm stepping out. Well, let's talk about something meaningful then, because we've had development camp, we've got rookie camp going on, we've got some actual hockey happening at 4 o'clock tomorrow, the Montreal Canadiens rookies versus the Sens rookies. Who's been standing out so far, and who should we be keeping an eye on?
Well, 6 names pop to mind immediately. We'll go with Shane Pinto, Jacob Bernard-Docker, Igor Sokolov, Angus Crookshank, Ridley Gregg, and Matt Sogard. I think that
great list. Yeah.
I mean, I think Pinto is the one that I'm most interested in, because a lot is being potentially expected of him, because there's a guy that doesn't have a lot of NHL experience, but he is absolutely in the mix with Colin White as a second-line center.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big ask, and so watching him, if he's going to be even remotely ready for that role at the NHL level, he's going to need to be almost dominant in these 2 rookie games. Not sure if he's playing in both or not.
Okay.
He's definitely going to have to show the Sens brass a lot here if he's going to take something like that on in the NHL this year.
I would say the other guy, at least from my perspective, I'm most excited to see, because we've been hearing so many great things, and he just sounds like an amazing kid, and what he's gone through to get to where he is today is Igor Sokolov. I mean, what a great personality, and fans have fallen in love with this kid.
I still remember the day he was drafted. Someone had video trained on him and his mom, and they put all this lovely music in the background as the announcement was made that he was finally drafted, because he was overlooked in his actual draft year. And as an overager, he lit it up in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, and so you could see how happy he was, seeing his mom embracing, and all he's done is, really endear himself to Sens fans since he was drafted. He seems to give media requests to anybody. I've seen him on, the smallest of podcasts right up to the biggest broadcasts. He is so gracious with his time, super nice guy.
Yeah.
And on top of everything else, he seems to have the tool set, maybe with the exception of skating. That seems to be the knock on him.
But something he's worked on, Steve. Ian Mendez had a great article in The Athletic talking about his skating and how he's been working with a skating coach for the last 3 years, and had to really just completely change the way he skated. And that to me shows, hard work, right? That it's somebody that is going to endear himself to the coaching staff.
For sure. And, keeping at it, grinding away, that's been his MO. I mean, you don't get drafted at all in your actual draft year, and that's going to knock the wind out of a lot of kids. He basically stayed after it, the old nose to the grindstone, as they say. And, he seems to be a guy that will do whatever it takes. Whatever you need, I'm going to do that. And this is an organization that also kind of rescued Mark Stone's skating ability off the scrap heap. When he came into the NHL, the skating wasn't where it needed to be, and they worked with him, and he found that extra stride he needed to become a star in the league. And maybe the Sens have another game plan like that for Sokolov. That's good to hear.
Steve, let's turn our attention to the CFL and the Red Blacks, because this is a really big deal as far as I'm concerned, announcing Thursday that they have signed former NFL quarterback and former Pittsburgh Steeler Devlin Duck Hodges. And what really stands out to me, because I think at this point in the season, when you're 1-4, you've lost 4 in a row. Yes, quarterback is a huge issue for this team. Nichols and Davis are not doing it. And I would have assumed, okay, maybe they're going to bring somebody in, sign them to a 1-year contract, and see what a 3-year contract in the CFL is a huge deal, Steve. Maybe you could just detail why that is such a big deal.
It is a big deal because this is a guy with no CFL experience, and it shows clear commitment from the Red Blacks and GM Marcel Desjardins that they really think a lot of his CFL potential. For one, he's been on the negotiation list for the Red Blacks for 4 years now, so they've liked him for a long time, and they clearly wanted to draw him up here. And the 3-year contract
shows some level of loyalty. I mean, as much as you can in the CFL, because you don't have guaranteed contracts.
Yeah.
But it certainly made it more than worth Hodges' while to come up here. And this is, I think, as far as guys who don't have CFL experience, this guy seems to be just exactly what the doctor ordered. Super popular guy in Pittsburgh 2 years ago with the Steelers.
Yeah.
Heart and soul guy. Started 6 games in the NFL that year. And I think that he's got a real opportunity here. And he certainly, as we know, as you mentioned, he won't have a tough act to follow.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I should mention, too, that the Red Blacks also signed 6 other players. So they're showing that they're being serious, because I think a lot of people after those first 5 games kind of said to themselves, well, they're just going to let this crash and burn and do a rebuild. And hats off to management and Desjardins for saying, no, we're not going to. We're only a few games into the season here, and we're going to try to turn things around. Steve, always a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Derek. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. That's Steve Warren, weekly guest, of course, and veteran Ottawa sports broadcaster and host of the Sens Nation podcast. Fantastic podcast, by the way. If you haven't tuned in, I encourage you to do so. We're going to talk some Ontario politics coming up after the break, because it's time for Queen's Park Review. This is Derek Phage filling in for Rob Snow on Rogers TV and City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Friday, the 17th of September. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now, partly cloudy in Ottawa, 21 degrees, 22 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. An Ottawa City Councillor wants to know why so many West End school bus routes have been cancelled due to the driver shortage. Alan Hubley has written a letter to the Ottawa Student Transportation Authority saying he's hearing from parents about the cuts and argues that the route cut should have been made more evenly throughout the city. The number of complaints coming into Ottawa's bylaw department is rising, and its director says officers are struggling to meet their expected response times. Bylaw officers in other municipalities typically deal with 400 to 600 calls per year, but in Ottawa, it's more like 900. The bylaw director says that's just too many, and it's because the population keeps growing and council passes new bylaws that need to be enforced. New COVID-19 data is in this morning, 795 new cases today in Ontario. Of those, the province says 64 are in Ottawa. Renfrew County, 4. The Eastern Ontario Health Unit, 21. And Leeds-Grenville-Lanark District Health Unit, 3 new cases. 5 more people have died from the virus. Updated local numbers will come through the afternoon. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derek Phage here, filling in for Rob. Thank you for tuning in on Rogers TV and City News. We had some fireworks last week. My goodness, did we have a good time last week? Well, at least I did. You know, I probably have the easiest job of the 4 of us in this next panel. It is time for the Queen's Park Review, and we are joined as usual by Gilles Bissot, NDP MPP for Timmins. Welcome to the show, Gilles.
Hello, hello.
Good morning. And we also have John Fraser, Liberal MPP for Ottawa South. Welcome, John.
Good morning, Derek.
Good morning. And Dave Smith, PC MPP for Peterborough Kawartha. Welcome, Dave. Great to have you here as well.
Thanks, Derek. Appreciate that.
Let's talk vaccine passports. We got the details this week on the vaccine passports. We've talked about it in great detail here on the show, but it's always great to get more opinions on it. Let's start with you, John. What was your initial reaction when you saw the details?
Well, look, first of all, it's late. The government's scrambling to pull it together. Hopefully, they'll be able to deliver the electronic version on the 22nd. That remains to be seen. You know, I think there's I think it's come up short. You know,
okay.
I did note in the minister's press conference, she said, if you have a problem when you're sorting out this thing with someone who's trying to get into a theater or a restaurant, call 911.
Oh my God.
That's not what 911's for.
Right.
It's called bylaw, and chiefs of police had to correct that. Like, you know, the government needs to do the work to communicate things clearly to people so that they can have trust and confidence in it. You know, the other piece is, you know, you can go to a restaurant and you have to be doubly vaccinated, but the person serving you, they don't. Or a movie theater, or any other place, non-essential place that these passports are being used for.
Well, John, we've had lawyers on the show, and you know, and when it comes to labor laws, there is a fear that we could tie up the courts with that situation.
Here's what the government had to do was come out and very clearly take a leadership role. What they've done,
and we did.
No, just a second, David. And what the government did was say, look, everybody, you make your own decisions. So every school, every hospital, every business, every amateur sport organization has had to go through this thing that we knew we had to do, that we needed to have universal vaccines. So instead of the government doing its job, it made everybody else do it. And that's a problem.
Well, yeah, and I mean those issues, John, are separate to the vaccine passports. I mean, we can go back and look at missteps, I think, from every level of government, regardless of the party. Dave, I mean, give you the chance to respond here.
Thanks for that, Derek. When we're talking about the vaccine certificate program here, it's not unlike when we implemented the mask program. There's uncertainty involved. Absolutely. Anytime you introduce something new, there's uncertainty, and that creates a level of almost fear on this. What we're going to see when this rolls out is no different than what has been going on in restaurants and bars for the last 100 years. If you go into a restaurant right now and you look like you're underage and you ask for a drink, they're going to ask you for your ID and they're going to check it. And this is essentially the same process that they're going to go through to see whether or not you're vaccinated. Can you come into the restaurant? Do we need to make accommodations and have you go to the outside patio instead? It's something that server staff have been doing the entire time that they have been working in a bar or a restaurant. So it's not something that is completely new. It's just a slight variation on what they have been doing in the past. We know that the people of Ontario are responsible. We know that everybody wants to get out of COVID, and they're going to be taking the steps that they need to make sure that we don't have problems. if there is a case where someone is belligerent, where someone is beyond what would be normally expected, then yes, by all means, you can reach out to the police, you can reach out to bylaw. But that has always been there.
Yeah, Dave, I agree with you there. I mean, perhaps, John's example that it was misspoken, saying call 911. But if somebody fears for themselves or somebody is getting violent, well, certainly that's where you turn to, right? I mean,
absolutely.
There's no denying that, and we're hoping that's few and far between. Jill, how about yourself? Do you see any holes in the details of the vaccine passports?
Well, I'm going to come at this a little bit different.
Okay.
I'm glad that the government did what it did, finally coming to the decision that we have to have a vaccine passport. It could have been done sooner, but that's all in the rearview mirror at this point. But nonetheless, the government made the decision, and it was the right decision. Now, the difficulty is that the way that the exemptions and how the rules work when it comes to how the vaccine passport, who can go in, and et cetera, et cetera. And John laid out some of them, and I took the time this week, as probably most MPPs do, to go around and talk to some of our restaurants and places where this is going to be enforced.
Okay.
And you know what? The majority of the businesses are supportive. They say this is the right thing to do. I don't have a problem with that. But there's a lot of question marks in regards to what the rules are, and they've raised the issue. Somebody can come into my place, be on the patio, and they can go walking through the restaurant or the bar and go to the bathroom, or they can go in and settle up their bill. And I can't stop that. And what do I do if that person's longer than 15 minutes? My staff aren't going to be standing there with a stopwatch. He says we may not notice that the person migrated into the restaurant under the guise of going to the bathroom or paying the bill, and are still there depending on how crowded the bar is.
But to Dave's point, Jill.
My only point is the only point I'm trying to make here is we needed something that's consistent. Yay or nay. If you're vaccinated, you get in. If you're not vaccinated, you don't go in. And I think that would have made the life of the people have to enforce this in the stores, et cetera, a lot easier.
Yeah, I
got to jump on that for just a second.
Okay, go ahead.
I was being nice to you, Dave.
You were, and I appreciate that.
Oh, good.
But one of the things that you seem to miss on it is that if somebody is at the patio and they have to go to the washroom, it's not reasonable to say, no, I'm sorry, you can't come into the restaurant to go to the washroom. You have to do it someplace else. So you do have to make accommodations. You do have to make some minor adjustments to accommodate all of that. And I don't think that we've gotten it wrong. I think this is the right approach to it. Because it's finding that.
In that situation, Jill, I agree with Dave, because I can tell you, and I haven't spoken about this much on the show, but I am actually the president and ambassador for the Canadian Continence Foundation. I have lived with chronic fecal incontinence since birth due to a birth defect, and if I happen to be and you know what, there's people that live with urinary incontinence by the millions in this country, and if they happen to be unvaccinated, I mean, not to be able to use the facilities in kind of an emergency situation, that I think we can set aside. I think that's reasonable as far as most people are concerned.
Isn't that somebody can't go to the bathroom? The issue is those people who have to enforce this may not be able to. Like, I talked to a couple of bar owners and some restaurant owners this week, and they're saying, and especially the busier places, like, we don't know who walks in. If somebody walks in and says, I have to go to the bathroom, do you have your vaccine passport? No, I'm not vaccinated. Okay, you got to come in and you got to come out. But they have no way of knowing, and they may not recognize the persons once they're in a busy establishment, that the person migrated into the restaurant.
Right, Jill. So my point was going to be that in response to that, that Dave brought up earlier, and I agree with it, that I honestly believe most people are in Ontario are going to be responsible. I mean, how often is that going to happen?
With you, but the anti-vaxxers
are going to be going, okay, guys, this is our chance. Let's go from patio to bathroom to the bar inside. Let's go. I mean, I just don't see it happening, Jill. Okay.
Well, that's what the bar owners are telling me. I spoke to Compass Brewing and a few others this week.
Okay.
And they're saying it's going to be hard for them to enforce this because they don't recognize all of their patrons that come in.
I think it's going to be hard for them to enforce it for different reasons, and that is that they're going to get into confrontations with an anti-vaxxer that's just going to get angry. I'm not necessarily worried about an anti-vaxxer doing the sneak attack on the bathroom to the bar situation. Let's move on to the FAO report, okay? This is another thing everybody's talking about. For those that aren't familiar, on Wednesday, the report from the Financial Accountability Office came out and says the Ontario did not spend any funds from a new $2.7 billion COVID-19 response program in the first quarter, the province's fiscal watchdog found, prompting critics to question why the government didn't use the money during the third wave. And we know some of that money is coming. So I'm going to throw that to you first, John. What did you make of the FAO report? Mr. Fraser, are you there?
Yep, sorry.
That's okay.
Look, the FAO is an independent officer of the Assembly, and his report is what it is, and the government hasn't spent the money. It's part of a pattern of what I call a shell game with the government. You know, when we started out in 2018, they said there was a $15 million deficit, and the Premier even said, the Auditor General said there was, and she had to correct him. It was really more around 8 or 9. Now, the government has a habit of holding back money so they can make things look better at the end of the year, or exaggerating a hole so that they can look better at the end of the year. All governments do this to an extent, but this government has taken it to new levels. And I guess the real question about this is, have we spent enough money making sure we could catch up on those surgeries that need to be caught up in all Ontario hospitals? Have we spent enough money making classrooms safer, smaller class sizes, better ventilation? And I think the answer is no.
John, you don't think that this is some of it's sort of misunderstood accounting where, you know what, some of the money has been spent, we just don't see it in the books yet?
Well, I think the government, first of all, the FAO has access to the books. If, in fact, that was the case, the government should have responded in that way. But I trust the FAO and the Auditor General before I do the government in taking a look at the books, because the history of this government is they play a shell game. You know, they said, we spent $600 million in autism a couple of years ago. They spent $3 million. So it's just part of the pattern. And so, we need to spend more money catching up on surgeries. We need to spend more money making sure our schools are safer. We can see that COVID's more of a risk for those under 12. And the government needs to do that. It's not on the books. And I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I mean, I can't confirm $600 million to $3 million, so I won't touch that subject. But I'll let Jill comment on this before we go to break. And Dave, don't worry, when we come back from break, certainly we'll get your feedback as well and your response to Jill and John. But Jill, what were your thoughts?
There's two issues here. You know, the federal government, at the bequest of the provinces, is stepping up and providing money to the provinces that they need to help shoulder the cost of the things that we need to do. Smaller class sizes, better ventilation systems in our school, hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you're not going to spend the money, you're really saying to the federal government, we're okay. We don't need this anymore. So it's like you're sort of damning yourself when it comes to future requests from the federal government, because they'll say, well, you haven't spent the money. At least it'll be one of their arguments. Will they get away with it? Who knows? The other thing is that there are things that they could have spent money on. Only about 30 to 40% of our schools now have HVAC systems that have been upgraded. We still have a lot to do inside our schools. We needed to reduce class sizes. We've seen this year with the opening of our classes, and we're all glad that that's happening. There's larger class sizes. We see what's happening or not happening when it comes to healthcare and long-term care, home care. So there are places that we needed to spend money that were directly COVID-related, and we didn't do it. And I don't think it's just an accounting error. The FAO knows what the government spends, where they spend it, and how that works.
Excellent. All right. Dave, we'll get your response after the break. This is Derek Phage filling in for Rob Snow right here on Rogers TV and City News.
This hour of the Rob Snow Show is brought to you by Kirby and Masson Insurance, your local insurance brokers for over 100 years.
I started, as I said, at Lester's Barber Shop, and it was kind of It was one of those things that it was just an opportune time for me to get into it, just because he had decided that he was going to retire after the fire, and then the opportunity presented itself that I could open my own shop. And so I went from a 150 square foot space on St. Patrick's Street to a 600 square foot space just on Beechwood to now here, and I'm in a 1,400 square foot space now. And I don't know, it's been an interesting journey because, you know, you think that you're just going to be just you or a really small space, and then all of a sudden, you know, you've got 10 other people working for you, you're in a much bigger space, and even incorporating the boutique. Last March, when all of this started, I mean, we closed down a little bit earlier than everybody else, and I'm going to say, you know, being honest, part of it was social pressure. We shut down before everybody else did, and I'm watching all these other salons, you know, just be really responsible and saying we don't want to be a part of the process. So we got ahead of it and closed, and then, you know, the week later, the government's like, everybody's shutting down. And so it was a little nerve-wracking. I guess the first step of us, you know, trying to innovate and just keep moving forward was when the salon is closed, right? It's like, what do you do? Our whole industry is based on being with people, cutting their hair, providing a service. You have to be people together to do that. You can't do that remotely at all. So one of the first things that I saw in our industry, what people were trying to do is they were selling their hair products that they had. And luckily, I've had a website that always had a web store in the back. I just never used it. So as soon as I saw that people were doing that, I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to load up all my stuff. And so that worked out really, really well. And then from there, I managed to find a place that was like a wholesale website that allowed you to have net 60 days. So you don't have to, you can order all the stuff. You don't have to prepay any of it. There's free returns, all that. So that made it really easy for me to bring in other products and start trying to sell it. And so I went from selling hair products to shave products to bath and body products to a little bit of clothing and jewelry, and now it's just morphed into this whole, like, I want to make it a whole legit boutique. And by December of last year, I decided that this is a full-fledged thing and we're going to separate it. It's its own company. So it's really finding an opportunity that's there and running with it. So it's been really fun. Our clients are loving it. Our clients that have been here for a long time, they love it.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derek Phage here filling in for Rob on this Friday morning. And we are in the second half of our Queen's Park review, and we're talking about the FAO, the Financial Accountability Office report. And they found that the Ontario did not spend any funds from a new $2.7 billion COVID-19 response program in the first quarter. Some people are calling it an accounting, a misunderstanding of accounting. We heard from Gilles Bisson, NDP MPP for Timmins, who joins us each and every week, and John Fraser, Liberal MPP for Ottawa South, who also joins us every week. And now we turn to Dave Smith, PC MPP for Peterborough Kawartha. Dave, this is your opportunity to explain.
Thanks, Jack. I really appreciate this. And first off, I have to say thank you so much to John for admitting that when he was in government, they consistently cooked the books. That's something that we have been saying all along. So thank you so much.
You did set yourself up, John. You did set yourself up.
It really surprises me. I sat back, and the first thing that came to my mind when both Jill and John were talking was, wow, because they both know that the Ontario government follows the GAAP accounting procedures. And when the FAO comes in and does this, it's a snapshot in time. When you report your expenses, you report them at the time that they occur, but you may not actually have it in the report for that quarter. And that's why we have public accounts that comes out in September afterwards, because it gives the appropriate length of time for government to have all of that reconciled properly in the books. And it'll come out as part of public accounts next September when they go through the budget. There are expenses that obviously happened that you're not seeing in there, like all of the reporting, all of the rapid tests, all of the PCR tests that were done, that didn't show up as an expense in the Q1 expenses.
Well,
But
it's Dave. It's almost like, if I can give an example. It's like, you buy something on your credit card and you don't see your statement on what you owe, the balance that you owe, until 30 days later. Right?
Exactly.
Same idea.
And it's a snapshot in time. So when the FAO made the request for it, those things hadn't been put into the accounting system at that point. It will be caught up.
So
Go ahead.
Are you saying the FAO's just putting out stuff that doesn't mean anything? I don't really understand you and why you're saying that. And
no, I'm not saying that at all, John. I'm saying the FAO is doing a snapshot in time.
Dave,
and at the time that they made the request,
Dave,
you asked me the question, John, so I'm answering your question.
I'm just finishing. You answer the question after I finish. When I gave the example of the $600 million you claim to spend on autism, the public accounts that came in September, almost 8 months later, 6 months later after that fiscal year, said that you only spent $300 million. But up until that date, you still claim to have spent $600 million when you knew you didn't. That's my point. So the public again, we're going to see that. It's just
two quick things before Dave responds. So first thing is that public accounts is not going to be until September after the next election. So that's a little bit convenient. But the second thing is that the FAO, like your analogy that the credit card, you don't know what you spent until after you get the bill. Listen, it's all electronic. I put money, I don't have a credit card. I use my debit card, one of those Visa debit cards. I know right away what I've spent because it's online. It's there all the time, and it's the same with credit cards. So the FAO knows what the government spent and didn't spend, and he would not, in his office, would not come out and say what they did unless they found something or didn't find something.
What they would be saying is what was in the books at the time. And as I said, it's a snapshot in time. So they would have come in and said, we want to see what the finances of Ontario are as of this date. And as all of us know who've been involved in business, you'll have ongoing recurring expenses, and then you make the adjustment back to when that expense actually occurred. So if I were to buy, just as a simple example, if I were to spend $100 on 3 months worth of something, it's not booked as a $100 expense in 1 month. It's spread out over all 3 of those months. So when we're looking at government spending over the course of an entire year, 1 quarter we may have some expenses that come out, some cash that flows, but because it's spread out over the entire 4 quarters, it doesn't get shown as part of quarter 1 and part of quarter 2.
Okay, we're gonna guys, gentlemen. Sorry, we're gonna move on to another topic because we could be talking about this for a while, and I'm certain it will continue because
your head is spinning.
Yes, well, so is mine. Let's move on to a very serious topic, and that is that of Western University. They are beefing up security and launching a sexual violence and student safety task force in the wake of assault allegations that have rocked London, Ontario's campus. I would like to get some thoughts on this, the sexual violence at Western University. Gilles, what do you think should be done about this?
Well, listen, it's very serious. One of my best friends, his daughter is just attending Western in residence on your first year. She's literally locked herself in her room and is not going anywhere because there have been cases of sexual assault or inappropriateness while she's there, and she is quite frankly, quite worried. So I think there's some initiatives that are being taken by the university that are going to be helpful. But you have to ask yourself the question, what is it in our society that allows this type of stuff to happen? Because if it's happening at Western, it's happening in other places across Ontario.
I agree, Gilles. I think that's the scariest part of this situation, right?
Exactly.
And so, such great numbers. I just don't understand.
It's almost as if, there's something going on. But my point is, it's across our society, and I think we shouldn't just leave this to the universities. I think we all, as human beings, have to find ways of being able to raise this issue, to say it's okay for women to report when they've been sexually assaulted. We need to take it seriously when they go to the police so that it's actually investigated and not say, well, here's a tap on the head, go home. That was just a bad date that you had. We need to take it seriously. We need to start changing the culture.
And men have to step up.
All of us have a role to play in
men in particular have to step up and support.
Absolutely.
John, what do you think should be done about this?
What Jill says is really quite right. It's about it's as much about a culture change with mostly young men.
Yeah.
And I think when you send your son or daughter away to university, you have an expectation that the school that they're going to is going to do everything they can to prevent things like this from happening. So it's too bad that it takes an incident like this to shine a light on the issue.
Yeah.
And so zero tolerance. There needs to be more done, I think, or at least looked at campuses in terms of, these, when we first get to school, Frosh Week and these other, a big party weeks, is that the right thing?
Yeah.
Are we doing enough to protect, especially young women?
Agreed, John. John, I'm just running out of time, and I'd like to get Dave. Dave, you can have the last word on this, Dave.
Thanks, Jack. I really appreciate that. I've got two daughters. Both of them went to university. And as a parent, you expect that when you take your child someplace that they're going to be safe. And both Gilles and John are bang on. But I'll give them all the credit in the world. This is about changing the culture. This is about making sure that we respect one another. And it can't be emphasized any more than that. Unfortunately, the only thing that we can do is react when it occurs. We need to have a lot more education, a lot more of a culture change early on so that these things don't happen. When they do, we need to make sure that we've got the things in place so that when someone reports abuse, sexual harassment, any form of harassment, that the questions that are being asked are what happened that night, what happened that day.
Yeah, we have to act swiftly.
Not relevant questions about what happened 10 years ago in your life or what you were wearing that night.
Exactly. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Have a great weekend. That's Gilles Bisson, NDP MPP for Timmins, John Fraser, Liberal MPP for Ottawa South, and Dave Smith, PC MPP for Peterborough, Kawartha. This is Derek Phage filling in for Rob Snow. That does it for me. Rob will be back on Monday, the day we go to the polls. He's going to have a lot to...
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.